You know,
being here. What's up?
I was thinking about something.
What are we thinking about, bro?
I was thinking about what's going on in the earth, right?
What's happening in our minds?
Yeah, and I wondered, why does it matter?
We're about to find out.
Holy shit. Ready?
Just kidding.
Welcome to Earth, Mind, and Matter. We said, fuck it, let's talk about albums. We said, let's talk about some movies and some fucking comics. This week in the universe, across the internet.
So what's up, Javi?
What's going on, Frankie? Oh my God, do you hear that? Wait, do you hear that?
What the fuck are you talking about?
I hear the sound of an amazing episode about to happen.
What the fuck are you talking about? Yes, I hear it too, man. I hear it too. We were just jamming out to the intro, man. That shit is still fucking
It's a
flames.
fucking slapper, man.
I love it, man. I love that fucking theme song.
I'm already jamming again.
Yo, facts, man. We're just about to jam to the whole intro, the whole fucking episode.
We should just have it play in the background as we speak the entire time.
As it gets louder and louder, and all you hear is dun 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 dun.
And the whole podcast for 2 hours is just a fucking song on loop.
DM us if that's what you want. We are
We'll
for
do
you
it.
guys, you know?
We'll do it. I'm a fucking circus clown. I'll do whatever you want, baby.
You whore.
Oh, man.
Yo.
Well, Frankie, how you doing?
Yo, bro, I'm having a good ass week, bro. Good ass
Nice.
week, swear to God.
That's
Anyway.
what I like to hear.
Anyway. Now, how you doing, bro? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
I know you were going to ask me, and I didn't want to cut you off. Because, you know, last time you cut me off like an asshole.
Hey,
I didn't want to do that.
We don't cut each other off no more, man.
Yeah, we've learned.
Mhm.
From the first episode, we've learned.
I hope we have. I hope we have, bro. But the more I drink, I don't think I will. But where are we right now? What are we doing, man?
Dude, we're on the earth,
We're going to talk about what's in our minds.
and this is why it matters.
This is Earth, Mind, and Matter.
Ooh.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We hope you're back. And if you are, what's up? I'm excited, man. I'm super
And
excited.
if this is your first episode, glad that you're here.
Welcome.
Hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome, welcome. If it's your first time here, I'm Frankie.
I'm Javi.
Just in case you wanted to know, kind of important information. And yeah, man. I mean, we're back at it. And look, man, I was coming here right to shoot and everything. It's a beautiful day. At least the sun makes it look like a beautiful
Yeah.
day. Still a little chilly here in New York City. That's where we're based. And man, the weather's getting nicer. The energy's getting more positive. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
less masks apparently. You know, NYC wise, but we're not gonna get into that. But like it's looking nice here. Like the horizon is being much more beautiful. It's not the
Everything
same.
the sun touches is yours.
It's Fauci's.
Oh, no.
But yeah, man, I'm excited to be here.
Yo, man, I'm glad that you are here. Imagine if you didn't show up.
It just be Earth. That's all it'd be. Yeah, man. But so what's happening today, Javi? What's going on?
All right, man. Look, I got a few things I want to talk about.
Okay.
First off, Joe Rogan, Neil Young, Spotify controversy.
I fucking knew it.
Oh, yeah.
I read you like a book, bro. I knew that
Oh,
shit.
yeah.
I knew it. Nice.
We're going to talk about that.
Uh-huh.
We're going to talk about thieves grabbing $48,000 worth of handbags
Mm.
in Manhattan during a daylight heist.
Nice. Good shit, thieves.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about a story that I wrote a couple years ago.
Awesome.
It's a short story, 2
Okay.
pages,
Nice.
nothing crazy.
Okay.
And then we're going to go on to our A.M.C. section.
A beautiful A.M.C. section.
Beautiful A.M.C. section where we're going to talk about a movie this time around.
Let's go.
We'll save it till we get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But is there anything you want to say before we dive in?
All I want to say is, man, I'm excited to be here as always. I think in every episode we shoot, you'll hear me say this, that I'm excited to be here. Just because, again, before we shoot, we just talk, we converse, we like Javi like to say, we talk shop. But right now he kind of gave me some insight on the editing process and how he switches the sounds of our mics. Interesting stuff that if you are trying to start something like a podcast or anything audio or visual, like it's a lot of magic that happens behind the scenes, but it's also a lot of work. I imagine, Javi, you sit behind the screen a lot of hours trying to fix up these little noises in the background.
Especially that last episode for sure.
3 hours, man. So if you do want to put some shit out, it just takes a lot of work. So I don't want to bore you motherfuckers. All I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of lots to appreciate whether you're doing that project itself or consuming it. There's a lot of magic in the background. Just like movies, books, comics, all that stuff. So
Oh yeah.
pretty cool, man.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Well, let's just dive in.
Let's go.
So, you like you expected, we're talking about Joe Rogan, and I don't know if you expected me to bring up Neil Young as well.
100%. He was the one that kind of kicked everything off.
Yeah. Nice. So, there's been a lot of articles coming up recently about
A whole bunch.
about the issue with Spotify right now. And a lot of that has come up because of the things going on with Joe Rogan and Neil Young.
Absolutely.
And another artist has followed suit with Neil Young in terms of departing from Spotify.
Yeah, I think one of them is India Ari or something like
Yes.
that. Yep.
And so, but to begin with all this, it's a pretty big story. It's so I really wrote down a lot of notes for this,
Nice.
but to begin with this, it all started with Joe Rogan. He was born on, I don't know his birthday, but
His blood type is
he's O negative,
Yeah.
I bet.
well, he's from Boston. I know that for sure.
Okay.
I know
All
that for
right.
sure. I hope so.
Nice.
Nah, he is.
Oh, and also before we really dive in, I just want to say I'm glad that we were able to get all the supplemental pictures out for last episode.
Shit was pretty fucking cool, and yeah, we'll be doing that regularly. So if you want to know any like visual details about the shows and what we talk about, it's a great way to hop on the social and just look at them, firsthand.
Yeah.
So let's
But
go.
we might even put in a correction or we're not where Joe Rogan is from.
high key, because I'm like 97.6% sure he's from Boston. So we'll see.
But anyways,
Nice.
this all started with Joe Rogan with some of clips on social media arising of Joe Rogan using the N-word on his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
Now, The Joe Rogan Experience is probably the most popular podcast on the internet in the world.
Man. Hell yeah.
And he claims that he was invoking the word in conversations where it wasn't used as a slur about specific people or black people in general. And that he was following an ethic he now says was wrong, which he held that white people should be able to use the word if their intent isn't to denigrate black people. So that's kind of his response to the whole situation. Yeah. And on top of that, he apologized. He also took down as many as 70 of his old episodes, which could be considered as offensive. Yeah. And in his apology, he wrote down, "I know that to most people, there's no context to where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now." So that kind of, it wasn't necessarily the first thing to kick things off, because before that even happened, there was controversy arising about the COVID-19 misinformation that has been coming up on his show. It's not the first time it's happened, and so there's a lot of concerns now where again, as said, this is probably one of the most popular podcasts in the world. So it brings good concern of what the kind of things that he's saying on this show, where it can very much easily influence listeners to believe this or that, whatever the case might be. And so in terms of the COVID-19 misinformation, the big controversy behind that is that in December, he had an episode where he had Dr. Robert Malone, a virologist and a vaccine skeptic, onto the show. For over 3 hours, they discussed theories and claims about COVID pandemic and vaccines, which included a false equivalence between the vaccine and Nazi medical experiments, baseless conjecture that President Biden is not actually vaccinated, and that inaccurate interpretations of government data and guidelines.
Well, one thing I want to say, we don't know if Biden is actually vaccinated. That's a like, I don't know, like, out of all the things, when it comes to actual facts and everything, we don't know what he gets, especially at an age that he's at, and whether they'd risk him getting that vaccine or not for whatever reason. We don't know anything about the president.
No, I mean, it's not necessarily, the issue isn't that they're saying that Biden isn't unvaccinated.
They're kind of just putting it out there like maybe he might not be vaccinated.
I mean, not even that, because the information that they were saying in that episode, they were almost trying to explain it themselves, so that in the video of Biden getting vaccinated, the best equivalent that I could think of it is that they were equating it to like the moon landing sort of fake
because
conspiracy
he was at
stuff.
a fake White House setup where there's this audience in front of him.
Yeah, so that's like the whole conspiracy behind it,
which is kind of crazy too. It's kind of a little weird. It's kind of like a show for the people to like go get vaccinated.
So it definitely it was more so the way that they sort of pushed it of like this is like what they did for sure.
Absolutely.
Kind of deal.
Yeah.
They weren't very clear on the fact of like, this is just a theory. This is just a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
They were never necessarily clear on that. And so that's the kind of misinformation that, well, not necessarily misinformation.
That's where I'm coming in now, because
that's
keyword misinformation kind of is like a big blanket that's kind of incorrectly blanketing a wide variety of topics that they're not even being assertive on. You feel me?
Yeah, it's more so just that kind of context can just be taken out of and interpreted in a bad light, where a lot of people can listen to that and say, you know what, I believe that. And then at a certain point it becomes like most conspiracy theories that just kind of grow.
True.
And so that those are some of the issues that have been happening with Joe Rogan and on his platform and whatnot. And he's a pretty popular guy. Yeah. And he's had a lot of people saying a lot of things to him and about him, and there's been a lot going on around him.
Let me ask you one thing. Did you listen to the Robert Malone podcast?
Robert Malone podcast? No.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Joe Rogan podcast?
I've never listened to a single episode of the Joe Rogan podcast.
So I kind of want to start with there, because I just want to say I do listen to the Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay.
And I have for a long time. Not as long as many other people have, but I guess for a bit, I've listened to that shit pretty lengthy amount of times and all that stuff. But I figured a lot of people that are doing these are, giving these accusations and calling him a misinformative person and all this stuff. I'm pretty sure a lot of them haven't heard a lot of his podcasts, right? I think it's really important, only because I didn't know you were going to bring this up, and I was going to do a shitload of research just because, I just thought it would be fun to really like not combat or this and that. I'm not trying to come on here and defend him like he's correct and, this and that, freedom of speech. I know a lot of people are trying to push that, and I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion for sure. But what I do want to stress is that I think it's important to not lead without knowing. Right, lead a whole movement about, hey, he's saying this and this and this, and then it's like, well, did you listen to what he actually said in the conversation, the whole 3 hours of conversation? And when your answer is no, which is most people that are accusing him of this, doesn't that sound like a lot like people talking about something they know nothing about? I mean,
definitely. I will say that what we can add in the supplementary stuff is that I have the link to the New York Times article where they actually broke down that episode and broke down anything that they considered misleading or just flat out false. And it's a really good article where they really broke all of that down.
For sure. So
we could always include that if you really want to take a look for yourself, because again, I never listened to the podcast, so I never listened to that specific episode. My everything I know about that episode is from the article I read. Yeah. But again, it did a pretty good job of breaking down the episode.
And another thing I wanted to include is that, I mean, who is Joe Rogan? Like, what does he do as a profession?
Well, he's a comedian turned podcaster.
And what did he used to do before being a comedian?
I don't know, actually.
He was on Fear Factor.
Oh,
he was the host of Fear Factor.
Really?
Yeah, man. He's the host of Fear Factor.
I used to watch Fear Factor all the time. That's wild.
And you kind of block away how Joe Rogan was like in there, right? He looks much more different. He used to have hair and shit.
He used to have hair?
Yeah, exactly. So I want you to think about this, right? I want you to think about, you go up to a comedian, let's say Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy, right? If you watch Dave Chappelle show, or Charlie Murphy, really, but Eddie Murphy's his brother. Rest in peace, Charlie Murphy. Anyway,
that's our rest in peace.
Yeah, man, seriously, a real rest in peace, because that motherfucker was cool as shit. Anyway, I want you to think about this context, right? Okay. Hey, I want some COVID vaccine information, right? Okay. I have three people to ask. I have a doctor, I have a news reporter, and I have a comedian. Okay. Right? And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to ask the doctor, of course. Right?
All right.
But let's just say the comedian's just talking about it and you just eavesdrop. And you're like, hey, man, he just said some stuff that I don't think is true.
All right.
All right. And so like now we're going to bash this guy and say misinformation, right? If you ever listen to what he says, he never advocates for anything. He doesn't, I don't think he's vaccinated himself. But he doesn't.
I don't think so.
But he doesn't push all these things as they're saying he does. When he was when he apparently took horse tranquilizer, right? Mm-hmm. And he released a video on his Instagram saying that he took something that could be labeled as that, but several other things to treat his COVID. People just took the context out of he just took horse tranquilizer, right? Now, when it comes to the wording of what I'm trying to say, it's hard because what ultimately I'm trying to say is that CNN took that video, they paled his face, they made him look more sick, they made him look more like he wasn't how he actually looked in the video.
Okay.
And they kind of skewed that image of him, which is kind of weird, right? Because CNN lies a lot. And I'm not trying to sound like a Trump person or this and that. But why would they manipulate the video to make him look more pale and look more sick? And why would they push the fact that he's saying horse dewormer or horse tranquilizer and all that stuff, right? And there's a lot of treatments for COVID that are very cheap right now. Right. I know hydroxychloroquine is one of those things where people, when Trump was saying that use it, everybody's like, well, Trump's stupid, so don't use that, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain treatment with the D, which we'll put in the supplements because I think it's important. That there's a doctor that says there's enough for everybody in the country, and it could be used as a treatment for a vaccine instead of the vaccine, right?
Okay.
Think about to Elizabeth Holmes, the lady with the fake test result.
Yeah.
Who I was thinking it could be a conspiracy where blood tests don't want her, like people who run blood tests, the $60 billion organization doesn't want one device to do the jobs of all blood tests, right? I mean, the government right now wants everybody to be vaccinated. Like that's the only thing people want, but there's a lot of different treatments that work for people, and I think we're just not looking into any of those treatments that he talks about heavily with multiple doctors. That I know that Robert Malone was one guy, but I mean, he just talks to so many people, and one person in particular is a guy called John Abramson, right?
Okay.
He talked with this guy for about 3 hours, 2 hours, and he's a medical doctor, a Harvard Medical School lecturer, and a national drug litigation expert and an author.
Okay.
So ultimately, there's a drug called Vioxx, right? Long story short, because it's a very lengthy story, this drug was allowed to be distributed to, let's say, treat people. Right, the test results were looked at and manipulated, and then it ended up killing like 60,000 people. A whole bunch of people. But it was passed off by, let's say, Big Pharma, right? Because
Martin Shkreli,
all this stuff. And at the core of it, the people who released this drug that didn't really do much and killed about 60,000 people, all that happens to those people is they get a slap on the wrist, and they're said, hey, you know what? We'll find you guys. You're not going to go to jail. I mean, they killed like 60,000 people of a drug called Vioxx. You can look this up yourself. This is not like fake news or misinformation.
Yeah.
Did you know that Pfizer has one of the biggest lawsuit fines in history?
Oh, really?
They have the biggest lawsuit fine in history. And the reason as to why is disclosed. This is something they also talked about in this podcast. Mind you, who's the expert in this podcast? Joe Rogan or the John Abramson guy?
I mean, definitely the John Iverson guy would have more credentials.
So I think that's where I'm trying to come off with this conversation first. Again, I know it sounds like, damn, Franky's trying to defend Joe Rogan and stuff like that. But I'm trying to really pick my words carefully right now. That's why I'm talking kind of really carefully, because I know people are going to be like, blah, 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 blah. And the N-word thing is a whole different situation. That's two different things. But what I want to really lead at is, I mean, when I listen to these podcasts, I'm there to listen to what the guest has to say. Joe Rogan kind of mediates that conversation, you know? But what I learned from this John Abramson guy is that there's a whole bunch of fishy shit happening in that industry, which we already know. You feel me? And I think where else are people on a million, crowd basis getting information from doctors like this? Because where most people are getting their information from? Fox, CNN, the news. And what is the news supposed to do? Entertain you. Scare you, this and that. And as we learned from Martin Shkreli, and what this guy says is the purpose of all like health fields, their biggest motive is to make the most amount of money, not to produce the best drugs for you. That's not an opinion, that's a fact.
True.
You know?
I mean, it is.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, that's where my biggest basis of is that I think he's a huge scapegoat at the moment for a lot of people's lack of research. Not that watching his shows are research, but I think because people do no research and this guy's just trying to talk about it with experts, like literal experts. Like the Robert Malone guy actually worked on the AIDS vaccine. Yeah. Like he knows Dr. Fauci personally.
Yeah.
And he's done that. Like, he's been around the industry forever. And I think the White House even refers to him in those situations. The main thing I want to get to, I want to let you continue, is that Robert Malone, who's worked in the vaccines, has been kicked off Twitter. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear about that.
So they kicked him off Twitter because apparently he was also providing COVID misinformation. But Twitter has never reached out to him and pointed out what he has said that got him kicked off of Twitter and what misinformation he spread, which is super fishy, especially when he doesn't agree with the vaccine, you know. And with this whole like, let's get Joe Rogan off the air. I just mentioned to you, I read Seth Rogen's book, right?
Yeah.
Great book. I forget what it's called, like it's a year or something. I forget, but Seth Rogen's book, if you Google it, it's great fucking book. Oh my God. Right. And there's one key point I want to talk about. He knew the person that discovered Twitter, founded Twitter, whatever, created. And when he was getting famous and verified, Seth Rogen asked the guy on Twitter. He was like, hey, man, I'm starting to realize that all these verified accounts are spreading hate against Jewish people. Like, often there's a lot of white supremacists and this and that want to like kill Jews, send death threats and all that stuff. And they're getting verified. What can you do to stop that? Right?
Interesting.
The guy was like, well, you know, this and that. We can't really do much. It's a process, this and that. That's what the creator said. His first name is Jack. Right. So Seth Rogen, he keeps going at it. He keeps saying like, hey, man, like more and more people are getting verified on Twitter and more people are like hating Jewish people and really coming at them. And I'm sure if there's people doing that, there's people doing that to black people, Mexicans, Asians, all that stuff, right? Excuse my brother if you heard that. And what I'm trying to get at is that finally Seth Rogen reaches out one more time. He says, hey, man, like now really people are, you know, hearing this all the time. He's hearing all the time. He's getting death threats. And the owner of Twitter says, Seth Rogen, Twitter is just a reflection of society. And that got Seth Rogen really upset. So what happened next? In either France or in America, which we'll put in the stuff, the supplementary stuff. Okay. They shot up a synagogue. White supremacists shot up a synagogue under Trump's presidency. Killed the most Jews. That's the most Jews that's ever been killed in an area ever. Like in modern day history. Except the Holocaust, of course. Yeah. But like in a shooting and stuff, you know? Yeah. And then Twitter is like, hey, this and that. Maybe we need to change some things, right? Deactivate this or that. Seth Rogen was even like, in the time you're talking to me, you can ban some accounts right now. To this day, there's still accounts that he's mentioned that are spreading hate for Jewish people and all that stuff that are able to function and run, that have millions of followers. Where's the attention they're giving Joe Rogan to those people?
I mean, there's I would say that definitely it affects more the people that listen to these kinds of things. So, for sure. In terms of the things that are going on with anti-Semitism and like and like Jewish hate and things like that, if you're Jewish, that's going to be more on your radar. For sure. It's no like mystery that those things happen, for sure, but it's definitely not on your radar as much if it's not advertised, if it's not advertised on the news as much or things like that, or if you're not a part of that community. Yeah, but this is internet though compared to like news, which are two different. I know that news is on the internet, but I think something like a podcast like we're doing is completely separate from like the FCC's verification of what you can say on television. No, of course. Yeah, so it's just. Oh, what are you gonna say? You know, because you kind of mess up my train tracks there.
I just needed to throw it in because I figured this is such a topic that I was really gonna prepare for to have a bunch of facts thrown at you, but I just figured that off my regular listening of what he has to say and what I've heard, because I've heard episodes where he's used the N-word, and I've heard constant vaccine episodes, but I've also heard a lot of episodes where he said beautiful things and talked to amazing people. And kind of uses his platform to elevate others and awareness for other things. And again, this is not my big defense on Joe Rogan. Obviously you guys can tell I'm a big ass fan, from how I'm talking. But this last one that I heard about John Abramson, I just heard it the other day just cause a little bit because I knew you were gonna bring it up, but also because I just like hearing what he has to say, and I like hearing the opinions of other people. Man, I got high and listened to this, and my eyes were bugging open. But you know why they were bugging open? Because I was learning so much, they're not secrets, but just blatant things that happen in medical history that we kind of just gloss over. That Zyx thing is a huge thing that if I had the facts, I would bring it up and tell you. But it's a really sad thing because they're just allowed to kill people, you know. And
yeah, I mean, so I will say, like, I'm no sayer of that. I'm trying to blame Joe Rogan singularly or anything.
For sure.
I would just more so say that in terms of the COVID misinformation, with this being a show of his, that's something that should be, as you call him, a mediator. That's something that should be mediated a little better, because because again, we'll put the New York Times article because I think it really points out a lot of that stuff that like is misleading or just flat out false. But it was on both ends for both dark, because kind of like how we feed off of each other. Both Robert Malone and Joe Rogan were just feeding off of each other, and it's, you can't put singular blame on either of them because they were both in that sort of context saying these things together. And then equally. I wonder
what things that they said that were correct that they didn't include in the newspaper article. You know, it's 3 hours.
But,
you know?
I mean, the whole point of the article was to just point out what was misleading or false, not necessarily to say like, well, you know, they got these things right, because at the end of the day, I think that's just something that the reader should just keep in mind as well, because they're very clear in saying that these are the specific things that they got wrong.
Yeah, but that's like a recovering alcoholic who has a beautiful life now, and then you're like, write an article about him, and like, hey, look what this asshole used to do, and say,
I mean, it happens.
You know, but
that happened with James Gunn. I don't
know who James Gunn is.
He's a director of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
He after Guardians of the Galaxy 2, a lot of old tweets of his resurfaced.
Okay.
Where he kind of made like pedophilia jokes and things like that.
Yeah.
And so Disney/Marvel fired him, and then DC picked him up, and that's how he made the Suicide Squad. And then everyone on the internet was like, okay, well, you know, like he's actually changed clearly. Like he's like, those are just bad jokes that he made. And like clearly he never made them again or anything like that. True. And so now he's back at Disney Marvel. He's going to be doing Guardians 3. So it's happened before.
Yeah. But I also mean that just in this, maybe that was a bad analogy. Just what I'm trying to say is that in a 3 hour conversation, if you just point out the misinformation and the wrong things, it just sounds more to me like clickbait and correcting a show that is not looking there to be factual. You know, it's not in general, it's just there to be heard, you know.
I mean, I would argue it is there to be factual.
Why?
Well, I mean, if you have especially what's the word, like specialists or things like that, people with actual credentials, that's a responsibility, I feel like.
Yeah, but people are entitled to their own opinions.
No, of course.
And I think that when they bring up those things, right? I mean, Joe Rogan is also saying things, and what is he again?
Comedian, podcaster.
So when you merge both opinions and both these things, I mean, I'm sure they're a little specific, but I'm sure you really just have to hear it, which again, most people don't. And they kind of just say, oh, well, you know, he said all these wrong things, but what if out of the whole thing, he said 10 wrong things and 100 right things? What is the New York Times going to write an article about?
Well, I feel like if that was the case, they probably would have said that. I don't
know, man. Clickbait is clickbait, you know?
I mean, I will vouch for the New York Times because I feel like they take their jobs very seriously.
For sure. But I'm just saying it's a more interesting article.
No, of course. But I don't think New York Times is out for clickbait. You could probably say that about other like news sources or things like that. But I feel like the New York Times is very reputable. They wouldn't do something like that just for the clicks.
Yeah.
Because I had to search for that article. It wasn't even on their front page or anything.
You're right. I just mean in the sense of what the article consists of. Like if the basis is just false and misinformation, I don't think they would want to include the correct things. Or if they made any attempt to say, well, he did say these things that could be correct. And I mean, one thing that he's always been a big advocate for is, you know, what can prevent you from getting COVID?
Prevent you from getting COVID? I don't know. The
vaccine. How about exercise and staying healthy?
Okay.
And vitamins.
Sure.
And vitamin D and zinc and quercetin.
Okay.
These are things that have you ever seen the news? Have you ever seen the news say, hey, you know how, you know, aside from getting the vaccine, you can also stay healthy because the healthiest people don't contract COVID or get sick from COVID as much. And I don't mean to say that for all people, because of course there are people in good health that have underlying diseases, you know, but who's more at risk? We say old people, but we also see obese people and people who are diabetic and people who have cancer or like, immunocompromised.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, at that point he's brought up multiple times from the in the midst of the pandemic to further on. And like vitamin D is a huge thing that I'm not even just you can look that up. Everybody hearing this can look it up right now.
It's a thing.
It's a thing that helps, and we're all lacking it in general throughout the United States. Before the COVID thing, we just regularly lack vitamin D because we don't get enough sun.
Boy, get yourself some sun D.
And I know we're being dumb serious right now, but I also think my whole basis of being really like a little passionate about this, a little bit, is that. We
get the fuck off the soapbox, Frankie.
we have a platform to build for ourselves as individuals altogether if we're trying to do that for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we find scapegoats to put it on, I think this is a very big scapegoat in general with quote unquote misinformation. Again, he may be an expert talking about whatever he's an expert about, or she, because there's multiple people. But whose show is he on?
Who shows what?
Whose show is the expert on? The health expert.
Joe Rogan's
and
show.
Again, what is Joe Rogan?
Comedian podcast.
So if he was on like CNN Health, maybe he's held up to a higher standard, right?
Of course.
But he's had comedians on that show talk about dicks and, fucking jokes and this and that, like nothing, laughing.
I will say there was another article I didn't fully dive into, but it was an article that sort of talked about how sort of comedians like Joe Rogan, to sort of reel back to him using the N-word, using these kinds of things, and regardless of the context, it can still be seen as offensive, and that past that, it brings up. Damn, I'm losing my train of thought.
Because I'm hitting you all these fucking facts, Javi.
I'm losing my fucking train of thought.
Well, to talk about that, what do people label his use of the N-word as?
Oh, okay, wait. I just remembered.
I got you, bro.
You just needed to say that, and it made me remember. But this article was just kind of talking about Trevor Noah kind of had his own response to this and whatnot, where he was kind of saying like comedians normalize these sort of stereotypes and things like that.
Okay. And
I think that's just a really interesting like perspective or interesting take on that, because like you sort of brought up the idea of who you're going to ask between a doctor, a comedian, or who did you say else?
A news anchor.
A news anchor or a journalist or whatever. It sounds like a bar joke. But
no, I'm stop.
But if you were to ask the comedian in that aspect, like if you look at a comedian like Dave Chappelle, they do the research, they do the work, and they can still be perceived as, like as we saw with Dave Chappelle, as anti-gay and things like that, whenever the case is. So a lot of the times, especially for comedians, there is that responsibility of that you're still put up to a certain standard.
I disagree because I don't think they're put up to a standard. I think the audience should interpret as they do. I think when we talked about the Beatles the other day, right? And we heard, what's the song, The Day in the Life? And they were saying that, hey, A Day in Life is about drugs. And John Lennon says, if you guys read drugs into our stuff, that's on you guys, not us. That's you. And I think what comedians often do is that they tell things about life that are very much true, and they thwart it to a comedic level where it's like, hey, at the end of the day, the core of everything, this is a joke, And I think if you take it as, I'm too sensitive to that to laugh at that, well, then I think it really is up to the person who intakes a joke. Because Patrice O'Neal is a dead comedian now. Yeah. And he was in a big argument. You can look this video up on YouTube. It's Patrice O'Neal with the news reporter or something like that.
The racist. Or no, not racist. The rapist.
Well, just any joke. Any joke in general. He says all jokes, good or bad, they come from the same place. All comedians just attempting to make you laugh. If you like the good jokes, well, guess what? Those good jokes that you like all come from, the original origin of us just trying to make you laugh. Us as in comedians trying to make you laugh, right? Yeah. And I think that's very much true. And I don't think they should be held up to a higher standard because they get to make those jokes because they've gotten to that stage making those jokes all the time. And now that one person or 3 or 7 finds it offensive, Jim Gaffigan is a comedian you very much like, right? For the most part. But he's a very clean comedian, right? So say Jim Gaffigan goes on stage to, let's say his crowd is a more white crowd, right? Or a male crowd or this and that. And then he brings up a comedian who's known for having a crowd that's Asian and likes dirty jokes, right? And he started making these dirty jokes in front of this white crowd. And the white crowd's like, hey, I don't like that. Boo, boo. But he goes to stadiums and sells out shows where they love those jokes.
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to opinion, sensitivity, but really at the core of it, freedom of speech.
No, I mean, just to make it clear, I'm not saying that comedians should be held up to a higher standard. I'm just saying that there is a standard, regardless if you want to accept it or not. There is a standard that certain people put comedians up to.
Yeah, but that's anything. I think so. Like movies, comics, albums.
I mean, it is like anything. So, but that's the point I'm trying to make. Like how I said of Dave Chappelle, you can do everything right and you'll still find criticism for it.
Okay.
So when I say that there's a standard to it, it's because comedians do put in that work. Like how Patrice O'Neal says that all jokes come from the same place, so that you're just trying to make the person laugh. There's still a lot that goes into that, of thinking up those jokes of like, okay, what's gonna get me the most laughs?
Okay.
What is, and I'm sure comedians think to themselves, is this too offensive, or whatever the case is. And for comedians who do dirty jokes, I'm sure they have jokes that are too dirty that are like, okay, I can't say this.
I mean, I don't know, man. I saw a good ass comedy show the other day with Ari Shaffir, Mark Norman, Shane Gillis, and Tim Dillon, Sam Morelli, Eric DeStefano, and the last guy I forget, he was in Impractical Jokers. The bigger guy with the beard. Sal.
I don't know anyone from Impractical Jokers.
God. Well, it was one of the funniest fucking shows I've seen in my life. And I mean, one of the big things the headliner said, the Ari Shaffir guy said, he's like, you know what happens with these shows is that you make a lot of jokes that make a lot of people laugh, right? But somewhere in the crowd, and this is his words, not mine, he says, but you know what there is a lot of out there? A lot of dorks. And those dorks, they're going to be there. And those dorks usually heckle the show or say, oh, I don't like that joke or all that stuff, you know? And you just want to say fuck off to those people, you know? Because, I mean, I'll tell you, man, I heard some pretty crazy, dirty shit literally 2 days ago.
I believe you.
And it was some of the most fun I had in my whole fucking life.
No, I believe you, but
this is just a show to the people. I'm sure you believe me.
Yeah, no, yeah. I just mean that, like, even for those people, I'm sure they've thought up jokes where they're like, this is funny, but I know it might be a little too far. I'm sure that's happened.
Oh, no, like, for sure. And they've gotten death threats, and the Ari Shaffir guy made a Kobe joke back then. Like, he tweeted when Kobe died, and he got so much backlash that when he was about to perform in a comedy club, somebody called in and said, if he performs, I'm shooting up the club. And his manager got pulled from him. But again, man, and I don't mean to be that MAGA motherfucker, but freedom of speech is freedom of speech. And I think I'm really a big firm believer in that. Before this Joe Rogan stuff, before Trump and all that stuff, I just feel like we should never be censored to what we have to say. I'm going to bring out one more Seth Rogen thing because I think it's important.
Okay. Right?
He was talking about when he was creating The Interview. The movie, The Interview about Kim
Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un. And for those who don't know, Seth Rogen created a movie with James Franco. And basically it talked about how James Franco is a famous news anchor who's obnoxiously, eccentric and all that stuff. And Kim Jong-un is a big fan, so they meet. But ultimately, Kim Jong-un is just using James Franco, this character, and trying to get close to him to threaten the U.S. and, do bad to the U.S. Yeah. So the government's like, hey, James Franco killed Kim Jong-un. That's the whole story, basically. And, there's a lot of backlash. A lot of people got worried. Sony got hacked. A lot of this stuff got released. All that stuff. And basically, the guy who was in charge of releasing into theaters and all that stuff, he said, hey, Seth Rogen, we're going to have to change the whole ending. Seth Rogen was like, I don't want to do that. He was like, we're going to have to, Seth Rogen was,
I forget how it ends.
Oh, it's like Kim Jong-un dying off a helicopter. But it's the ending that it was supposed to be is a real close-up of his head exploding.
That's funny.
The reason they wanted to it's super funny. The reason they didn't want to show that is because in North Korea, Kim Jong-un is a god. Like, he's looked at as a god. He's, technically speaking, they think he doesn't shit. That's how perfect he is. So it's fucking stupid. But can you blame him for being manipulated for so long and I'll also bring some other shit up too. So they were telling Seth Rogen, hey, which is funny, he has the same last name as Joe Rogan. They spelled differently, but it's kind of hilarious. He was telling him, hey, we gotta pull this off. We gotta make it different. We gotta make it more discreet. We might have to get rid of the death altogether. And he cooperated as much as he could, to the point where he wasn't satisfied with the ending no more, right? But at the end of it, he said, we're not going to be able to show it in theaters no more because North Korea threatened us, to attack the theaters and this and that. And before the decision was made, the guy who's in charge of the theater release told Seth Rogen, he said, "Hey, we're gonna wait for Obama to speak tomorrow, because he's gonna give his last speech of the year of his presidency.
Okay.
And then whatever he says, we're gonna base it off that, whether we keep it in theaters or not." So Seth Rogen's like, "Damn, the guy in charge is close with Obama, so they're probably gonna not let it be shown." The very next day, President Obama goes on TV. He says, "Hey man, I sympathize with Sony and everything that's happening, but altogether, I think for them to pull that movie was a mistake." He said, "I don't think that, we should succumb to dictators, threats. I don't think that we should, be submissive in terms of those things. And we shouldn't be scared of offending people that should be offended in the first place." And then after that, Seth Rogen was allowed to put his theaters in movies and Netflix.
Yeah.
When they pulled the interview, my first reaction is like, y'all a bunch of bitches. Y'all a bunch of bitches, because y'all are really scared enough to put a movie out. What precedent does that set, And then Obama says that, censorship will come from that. Because what happens when a documentary is released and people aren't happy about it, but has nothing but facts? What happens when Joe Rogan talks to a couple of people and asks their opinion on COVID vaccines that they're professionals on and that they've worked on vaccines? And some people are like, "Hey, I don't know at all what you're saying because I don't listen to your stuff, but if you're saying not to take the vaccine, you're wrong." It's like, well, why are vaccines so correct?
I don't think people are saying that directly.
But I think what people are doing is saying vaccine good, news, I only watch headlines, and Joe Rogan, I never watch any of it. And I've never looked up any information outward of Dr. Fauci, CDC. Because that's the direct information we get, right?
No, I mean, definitely it's a person per person basis.
For sure. But I think majority wise on a virus that's so new, when's the last time we looked up Dr. Robert Malone?
Today was the first time I heard of it when I was doing the research for this.
Isn't that in itself kind of interesting? When's the last time you looked up another doctor?
I mean, I don't really try and listen to doctors. I mean, like, I don't know if you saw the movie Don't Look Up on Netflix.
I couldn't finish it. Everybody that likes the movie, it's just overrated.
Oh no,
it's pretty overrated.
Nah, I think that movie is very smart. I
think it's all right. But that's not me saying like, no, it's trash, Javi. I'm not gonna listen. I think it's an overinflation of money, actors. I think it was done so corny in terms of the message they were trying to send. Because that's what everybody says. The message is so great, but it's just, I felt like they didn't need $1 billion cast to show it, Nah, I don't think the cast has much to do with it, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. But I think, personally, to me, I think the movie was really smart. It was done by Adam McKay, who also does Succession on HBO, also a really great show. Nice.
And it's kind of in a similar fashion where it's a lot about rich people and kind of their worlds and their lives in it.
Yeah.
And what I found really good about Don't Look Up is Leonardo DiCaprio's character, of how he's basically the Dr. Fauci of that movie. And how like memes come up about how he's like the super handsome scientist and like he's on Time magazine and things like that.
I would disagree though, because he's talking about a meteor and Fauci's talking about a vaccine that we know nothing about.
Well, but I mean, you could interpret the meteor and the impending doom as climate change, as the pandemic, or things like that. I think that's what's good about the movie, is that it's very open-ended in that sense, because the meteor is a metaphor. Yeah. Because they're like, yes, it can actually happen, but a meteor isn't gonna hit like the Earth anytime soon, from what it seems like.
Yeah. But can't the world explode like any moment? That's just me spitting balling.
Not yet. But we're way far out from that.
What I'm trying to say is that, I mean, if a meteor is coming, it'd be way different than a COVID thing sprouting. I think we're much more prepared for COVID or like a new disease than we are for a meteor. A meteor is they say you're a human being, right? A meteor is a T-Rex coming at you, well, you can't do nothing about it. You're doomed, right? Maybe you can avoid getting stepped on.
You also had to consider when the movie was written and made, because a movie is written way before it's ever made, and Adam McKay also wrote the movie.
Still,
and so if you take the context of what COVID was like when he first wrote this movie, and like, because for a lot of people it was a very scary thing, this pandemic to happen. It kind of seemed like the end of things very early on.
But we've had Ebola, we had swine flu, we had all these other things that are pretty much similar to it.
No, definitely.
It's just not as expanded, but it's things that we've done. And Spanish flu has always existed. Like, this is just things where like COVID isn't such a new thing where we couldn't write stories about it in general. I mean, aren't a bunch of zombie movies pretty much just that, you know?
Well, I mean, I love seeing all the references to zombie stuff now because of COVID, because
100%, right?
because of people saying like, I know because of COVID, 100% of you people would hide your zombie bites and things like that and whatever. So I just feel like with this type of entertainment that we've had in history, like zombie movies and things like that, the pandemic happening felt like a very end of world things for a good amount of people. I'm not going to say that everyone felt this way.
No, I mean, a lot of, even everybody, I myself, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like when Times Square was empty and shit like that, like world apocalypto type shit, you know?
Yeah. And so I like that's my point of what I'm getting at, of like the context of the movie, where you can see it as a metaphor, where you can see this as sort of like COVID vaccine stuff and whatever the case is, because a lot of people were scared of this idea of like the end of the world with the pandemic. So that was just kind of my analogy to that.
Yeah. But I just didn't like the movie, bro. I just couldn't finish it, and I just thought I think the best actor was Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought Jonah Hill's character was kind of silly.
I thought Jonah Hill's character is so funny.
I hated ScarJo's hair.
ScarJo?
Is she in it?
No, what the fuck? Jennifer Lawrence.
Same thing.
No, it's not.
Jennifer, whatever.
Jen-Law.
Oh, I hated her hair. But I mean, these are things that doesn't make the movie. But I just think the movie was just like, dude, I don't know. And I just couldn't finish it. And that's just, I don't know. People see, you know, oh my God, Kid Cudi's in it. Oh, it's gonna be great. What's his name? Medea. What's it called? Tyler Perry was in there.
Listen, all I gotta say
for no reason.
All I gotta say is that take it from what most people would consider a hipster. I don't give a fuck who's in the movie, as long as it's a good story. I'm in.
Let me tell you this: I was watching this movie in a bar full of hipsters, and I dead ass pulled. I was by myself watching a movie in a bar. Not that I do that a lot. I said that in the last episode. But I don't do that a lot. It just happens to be I have two stories from two different occasions, you know. But I'm watching Don't Look Up in a bar, right? And I'm drinking. It's like kind of last call, but we're just chilling there. And there's this white lady and some white guy. Literally, like one of them worked for Tastemade, and the other one was like a plant specialist who done a whole bunch of hallucinant drugs. He rode a bike outside the bar. He's a hipster. She works for Tastemade. She's a hipster. I don't know who these people are. Put my phone down real quick, and I'm watching the movie. I'm like halfway into it, and I look over. I'm like, hey, yo, excuse me, both of you. Can I just ask you guys a quick question? And they're like, of course, random Mexican. And they're like, what? And I'm like, what do you guys think of the movie Don't Look Up? Immediately, oh man, this and that. But overall, I mean, it's just pretty much the same thing. They just figured that this abundance of really expensive actors is overcompensation for a story that I guess gets better towards the end. I don't know. I didn't finish it, but kind of just isn't really that impressive if you put it with actors that weren't relevant, you know. But I think it's one of those things where it just kind of hits every sweet spot of everyone, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, because similar to Squid Game, it's just like there's just a certain criticism to sort of mainstream media in that way, where it appeals to everyone. So like Squid Game was so popular because and I will say that Squid Game was really good in terms of like how it was made, but also in Don't Look Up, in a similar fashion, I think was made technically in a really good manner, but that I also think it's a good movie.
Gotcha.
But I think it's plagued by the fact that it's mainstream because of its cast.
And I will say, I think mainstream throws me off a lot, because Squid Game, I was a little thrown off of it just because I was like, all right, I got the basis. These guys are just trying to not be killed playing these games that we all know. And, you know, I'm not going to judge Squid Games because, you know, from what I hear good and bad things. And after a while, I was like, maybe I should just stop judging the show based off how mainstream it is. You know, I don't want to do that also. But I did give Don't Look Up a chance. Again, when I say it's trash, I'm kind of just exaggerating, just, you know, for a little more of effect of my opinion. But I do think that because it's so much big names, that it kind of blinded me to appreciate the film. I think there's a reason when you see a movie, there's like one big star and several, like, you know, other good stars. And that's what kind of makes it appeal more, you know, like Wolf of Wall Street. I know it had an abundance of actors that did a lot of great, like Margot Robbie, Jonah Hill, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, directed by Scorsese, and the focus was on DiCaprio the whole time. And even the cop who like arrested him, like they were all in it. They're all big names, but it wasn't just big, you know, blatant throw up in your face. Like when you see Tyler Perry and what's her name, the lady from Devil Wears Prada, I forget her name.
Meryl Streep.
I think she was in it. I'm not sure if she was in that movie. just this overcompensation. It looked to me as overcompensation.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned Devil Wears Prada. We'll get back to that later.
Nice. That's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. Anyway, let's go back to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, no, like
that was a big beehole.
We fell down a beehole so far, I can't even see the rope.
Me neither.
Like,
me neither. But we're in the esophagus. By now, bro, that shit is crazy.
Okay, it almost feels wrong to get back into this. We just went on such a tangent. Yeah. Oh my god!
And forgive me, people. I know right now, like, yo, Frankie is head over heels over Joe Rogan. And you know what, guys? That motherfucker's cool as shit. So hear me out. I really don't give a fuck what you have to say, and I have my own opinion. So, well, I do care what you have to say as a person for yourself, but I'm entitled to my opinion too. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll bring up Neil Young's opinion of Joe Rogan but mostly Spotify.
Who? Nah, let me stop. Let me stop.
I mean, honestly, if you don't know who Neil Young is, he's a Canadian American rock star.
He's iconic as fuck too. I'm not gonna disrespect him like that. I may not know much about him, but my good friend Carol, who knows a lot of music about him, saw him in New York City. Was he in Oasis before or no? Am I bugging?
I'm not sure about that one.
I'm gonna look it up actually right now, so we're not like bugging about that. But the important thing about him is that he's such a he's a real musician. Like, he really is a hardcore musician. And my friend Karen went to go see him, and I mean, he just said that he really, you know, it says embark, so I'm gonna use the word embark, just really ventures outwards to express his musical love. And he's just a little outdated. He was born in 1945. Let's see. You can continue saying shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll say this. As mentioned before, he left Spotify in late January. Mm-hmm. And the reason why he did this was kind of over the Joe Rogan controversy.
Okay, I heard about
that. On his website, to a message to his fans, he wrote, "To the musicians and creators in the world, I say this. You must be able to find a better place than Spotify to be the home of your art. Mm-hmm. To the workers at Spotify, I say co-founder and CEO Daniel Ek is your biggest problem, not Joe Rogan. Ek pulls the strings. Get out of that place before it eats up your soul. The only goals stated by Ek are about numbers, not art, not creativity." Mm-hmm. And included with that post, he also encouraged people to divest from 4 banks: Chase, Citi, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, for their continued funding of fossil fuel damage.
What a hippie. I'm fucking with you. I don't.
No, it's very true for you to say that, because he's been consistently outspoken throughout his career.
And I respect that. I use Bank of America, so fuck you, Neil Young. By the way, I wanna correct myself. It wasn't Neil Young. It was Liam Gallagher. So sorry, my friend Kara, if you're listening. Liam Gallagher. So. I don't know who Neil Young is, period. But I just know when you hear a name, you know. When you follow music, you hear names like that pop up. And I won't act like I know what he has to say, but I think that's a very good point he has to say when boycotting those banks. So that I won't knock down or nothing.
And I'll say again, like I mentioned, he's been consistently outspoken throughout his rock star career.
I believe it.
And in the past, he's spoken out against Richard Nixon, George Bush Jr., Donald Trump. And
not Donnie.
Yeah, the Don.
First of all, I want to say I'm a huge just kidding.
Oh man.
You just see our ratings 1.1. Fuck this show. Bernie Sanders all day.
But anyways, Neil Young also described Spotify as the home of life-threatening COVID misinformation on selling lies for money. That's a quote from him directly, which I thought was a pretty interesting quote. He also pointed fans to Amazon and Apple as alternatives versus Spotify. Because Amazon has high-res audio.
I mean, they all do. They all have.
Not all of them.
Oh, like what do you mean?
So there's Amazon has lossless audio pretty much. And so, for example, Tidal also has lossless audio. Spotify does not have high-res lossless audio at the moment. I don't know that. Yeah, and that's been a long awaited feature that hasn't come. And so the fact that other platforms and services have it before Spotify, who's been in the business for as long as they are and as big as they are, has been a sort of a pin in people's like things of wanting Spotify to have lossless audio.
Advancing the experience of music listening.
Yes.
In the future now.
I tried Tidal for a month to try out lossless audio, and I could hear the difference. And,
Really?
And I was pretty taken aback. The only issue for me is that I wasn't going to pay $20 a month for Tidal. And on top of that, I listen to very niche artists and bands and stuff that don't really show up on Tidal. So that was just a whole mess.
Yeah.
It's definitely for more mainstream music and things like that. But the second Spotify introduces lossless audio, I'm going to sign up for that because I want it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I tried Tidal for a little bit too, and I just feel like I didn't pay much attention to it. So I guess it kind of glossed over my head. But I feel like in the future, companies like Tidal will be very profitable and all that stuff, you know, especially because Jay-Z and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And what's interesting about all this too is that Daniel Ek, the co-founder CEO of Spotify, he alluded to all this controversy in a recent meeting and whatever, where he said Spotify is already implementing several first of its kind measures to help combat misinformation and provide greater transparency. We believe we have a critical role to play in supporting creator expression while balancing it with the safety of our users. Now, what's really interesting about this is that in his 1,100 word opening statement announcing Spotify's successes, he used the word music only once.
Interesting.
And another thing that Daniel Ek has said before is that artists cannot wait to make music. I forget the exact quote, but he said artists can't wait a year or two to make music. He was basically getting at the idea that if you want to be a successful artist, you need to constantly put out music.
Interesting.
And when you look at the variety of genres that there are in music, that formula does not apply to all genres.
That works for like Tekashi 6ix9ine or some shit, but not like real music, in my opinion. You know?
Yes.
I think you and I can both agree with that. Because the first person I think of is Frank Ocean. I don't think you listen to Frank Ocean as much. Yeah, you know, like, but basically he like barely puts out music. You know, well, in terms of like complete, you know, official albums. You know, he has a lot of music, but like even now, like people will joke around like, where the fuck is the album? You know, and I promise you, the second he drops one, it'll be ridiculously incredible. It'll be not like good off the bat, because I don't judge an album like that, but I say like it'll be a spectacle. Things that people have been waiting for, because when you make people wait for something that you want so bad, they're gonna wait. You know, unless you die.
Sorry. And that's definitely been an argument of mine too, with the same thing. Where in the world of the genre that I listen to, of punk primarily, bands aren't putting out singles all the time. Yeah. They put out EPs and albums and whatever, and they kind of leave it at that. They don't really put out singles. Singles are more so a thing that you find in pop or rap,
mainstream artists. You know? Whether it be like whatever you think is AK trash or good. I mean, I think really it just comes down, like you said, to the individual or individuals. You know, there's no strict orthodox flow of things.
And so I thought it was really interesting for Neil Young to really say the blame isn't on Joe Rogan, it's on Daniel Ek.
Interesting.
Because it is true, because this man is out here saying things like, you need to be putting out music constantly if you want to be successful. He's capitalizing on a monopoly that he has built. And it really brings a question, because I said that I'm going to sign up for lossless audio for Spotify. So it's like, I'm still supporting them. But it's a really tricky situation, because I don't want to support Amazon either personally.
Shout out to Jeff Bezos. First trillionaire on earth, about to be.
I honestly might sign up for Apple Music. They have an app on Android. I might sign up for Apple Music. Yeah. But I'll also say that Daniel Ek had another thing to say about Joe Rogan, where he said, while I strongly condemn what Joe has said, I want to make one point very clear. I do not believe that silencing Joe is the answer.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And those are kind of all the notes that I brought up and that I have about the whole situation and whatnot. Yeah. It's definitely a whole mess. Yeah. Because Spotify is getting a lot of flack from all ends, because while Joe Rogan is sort of the pivot of this, because of the fact that he has the most popular show in the world.
I mean, he really does. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and I guess when I alluded before to sort of that responsibility for Joe Rogan, that's the kind of responsibility that I mean, because he has such a big platform. Yeah, I feel like any person that has a platform like that should be conscious of that. Regardless,
I guess it's easier for me to say. I mean, I still do disagree in the sense that, like, I think if you have a bigger platform, I think when you reflect back on the basis of what that show was supposed to be, which is literally him and Red Band, the guy he's been friends with that he hired after making silly fart videos. He literally hired a guy, flew him out, and they joined forces to create the podcast. And they were just shooting the shit, And I mean, just like me and you are doing right now, that's what they were doing. And back then, at a much, much older time, if you watch the old episodes, they're literally sitting in front of a desktop with old technology, having a dream that now is most people's dream, to talk for a living, right? And he may have a huge platform, but again, the basis of it was not to be the news. I think it's what people are trying to turn him into. Like, you have this responsibility because of your platform. I mean, there's so much people that they do so much wrong with it. I think we're all human beings at the end of the day, and we have a lot to say. And I mean, just to bring them back, some of the North Korean facts that I've told you, that I heard on Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, a lot of people don't give the lady. If you can just look up Joe Rogan North Korea podcast and listen to the conversation he has with that young woman who escaped North Korea, saw her mother get raped, and I don't know if she knew her father, and watched kids eat rats and organs coming out of living people's bodies, and possibly ate child meat, and talked about organs being harvested, all these crazy things. He gave her a platform too. Yeah. I don't know if you know the WWE wrestler Jake the Snake something. No. Well, he's a wrestler, and he was molested as a child, and or by his girlfriend, too, and abused. He gave him a platform too. These are, I mean, it is a big wrestler that people know. He talks about, people who deal with mental health all the time, right? And he talks to people like Jordan Peterson and Lex Friedman and all these people that, the reason I found about him, I didn't give a fuck about Joe Rogan back then. And one day I saw like Joe Rogan speaks with MIT, this guy, right? And I was like, oh, okay, who the fuck is this? And I just fell in love with the way he has conversation, and it inspired me to talk for, not a living, but just for fun. Because, like, I will say a big part of why I'm sitting here in front of you is because of Joe Rogan. So I guess you're a racist, misinformed bitch, Javi. No, I'm kidding. but I think what it is that, let's say me and you ever had a chance to have a platform even a decimal close to his, right? And then I remember I asked you, I was like, should we ever, we had different opinions on how much we would censor ourselves based on who's like allowing us to speak. But I think at the end of the day, I'm pretty open with what I have to say because I know my intentions as words. I know my intentions as I say things. Am I perfect? No. Are you perfect? No. But when you're starting to do things for no reason and people just put you up there for their reasons, I think you have some responsibility to not be like completely ignorant, but he could do whatever he wants. Again, he's not the news. He's not the government. He's kind of like,
the only reason why I say it is just because regardless if the basis might have been that it's just more of a thing that they want to shoot the shit, it's his show has evolved
for sure.
And that's what I get. Yeah. Because while I'm sure he still has episodes where he just shoots the shit and whatever the case might 100%. Be. It's just still because of that platform that he has. He has such access to so many people. So many people listen to him. It's a very it's a teeter balance. It's always trying to make sure that you're trying to please everyone, regardless if you don't want to. Yeah, it's still a balance act.
And this is the last thing I'll say. Last for real, guys. A lot of the things that he gets called for in terms of misinformation. He said things that were deemed misinformation that later on came about to be actual. And we'll put those in the supplemental stuff because it's very much true. Okay. And it has to do with the vaccine. It has to do with this and that. And it's misinformation until it isn't, It's just the truth, man. It's just the truth. And I very much encourage people to look into other treatments for COVID aside the vaccine. That's just what I'm going to say off the bat because there very much are those treatments. And the government is focused on being a vaccinated only like methodology. And I
will say, I've heard Fauci say he wants 75% of America vaccinated.
Yeah. But man, and we're not going to be on that tangent of COVID, nor were we going to talk about treatments that could be better for you or this and that. Just do your own research because I think at the end of the day, we're not here to tell you go get vaccinated or not. We're not here to blah, 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 blah. We're here to just say, whatever the fuck is happening, But I do know for sure that there are other treatments for COVID, and I know that people who make money off the vaccine, like Pfizer, who again has the biggest fine in history, and that's somebody who releases our vaccines, that they are the ones that want to make money off the vaccine. It's just the truth. And real quick, they're
pulling up.
and Pfizer is projected to make $36 billion in a year, right? That's when COVID was happening. And the last drug that was supposed to make a lot of money was supposed to make $20 billion. That was a drug called Humira. So when Pfizer dropped the vaccine, they were expecting to make $36 billion. Then within 2 years, they were supposed to make $65 billion, which is a shitload of money, right? Off a vaccine.
Still less than the Microsoft acquisition.
And this is one thing that I'll say that is absolutely true. And I'll just let you have it as that. Both Moderna and Pfizer declined to actively participate in creating the development of the capacity to manufacture drugs in underdeveloped countries.
Okay.
And that's a fact. And I forgot what movie star said this, but they were saying, if the vaccine is such a life-saving drug that should be distributed for free, why isn't insulin, EpiPen, and chemotherapy also distributed for free?
Because money.
Exactly. And what did we just see that Pfizer made off the vaccine?
Money.
$65 billion. When the other treatment, I forget that it starts with a D. I feel like such a dickhead for not saying it. There's enough for that for the whole country that could help. Just saying. Just saying. I'm going to put that shit up and you'll see. Anyway, the N-word is bad. Don't use that shit. I just, because that was a big part. I don't want to gloss over that. He's been in the news for that too. And I will say that Richard Pryor's album was called The N-word is Crazy. You know what I mean? Like, he did use the context of those comedians' albums, and I just think that's important to use. Not at one point was he saying it as a racist term.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Again, that's 100% clickbait when they say Joe Rogan's racist rants about black people. I don't think that's 100% true. I don't, because when you really watch those episodes, he's literally saying it just as a replacement as we say the N-word. Say we were discussing the N-word right now, like how bad it is. We're not going to say it, right? But say what I just said and he used it actually. That's the context he used it. You get what I'm saying?
No,
so,
I've looked into that myself.
So I think that's it's a shame that people are so quick to say, hey, clickbait. You feel me? That's so cool. My bad. My mic just did some cool shit. Sorry. So I just want to put that out there.
I mean, I'll say as my sort of last bit and my sort of last spiel.
And I promise I'll shut the fuck up about this because I know I just been.
But what I thought was interesting about like the context of like him using the N-word, because as an English major we read books and things like that where are written by black authors who use that word in their text. I've been in classes where the professor will say, no, you can use the word like as you're reading the text. And so the sort of context it comes down to is really interesting, I think. Because, I mean, as he said in his apology, it's not necessarily a word that should be said publicly or anything like that. But it's just a sort of interesting contrast where, like, you can talk about it in a more academic setting and whatnot, and it's not necessarily looked down upon, especially if you're reading it from a text. But when it is just sort of taken out of context or said out publicly, it can be very malstrued
which is what they did ultimately. And they do that to a lot of politicians, and they've done it to great politicians, bad politicians, good politicians. And I think that's the biggest flaw of what we're doing today, that because attention span is so low, we just cut it to what we want our message to be. And I mean, people can cut this conversation into terrible and make us look like racist assholes who love misinformation. And you know what I mean? Like it's true, and so I think you should be able to say whatever the fuck you want. I just really do. I don't care. I think today we're a bunch of sensitive bitches that don't want to hear anything that hurts their feelings because, internet told me not to, and I have a social profile to uphold because I can't say this, so I need to look perfect. And at the end of the day, we're all flawed human beings that, you may not say it, but you'll say shit, like, not to say it in a bad way, but like, in therapy, you say real intimate shit, and if you're saying things like that, does that make you a bad person? You know, or when in church, when you confess, you know, like, are you not supposed to say those things? Are you supposed to say those things just because you can, you know?
I have like a whole thing about that.
Of course.
Oh, God.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Don't get me started.
And I'm saying that's why it's strictly my opinion and I'm not correct, but that's why I really stress the word opinion, because I just think that as an American, as a real American, people, you know, die in other countries because they can't say a certain thing, and they can't publicate it. And journalists get killed in different countries because they literally publish the news.
Yeah.
And I think we should appreciate the fact that we can say whatever we want in this country. We can. You can walk up to a police officer and talk, you know, and as long as you're not being offensive to a police officer, saying a threat or whatever, you can actually say whatever you want, you know?
Yeah.
And there's levels to it, but nowadays you say one thing and let's say, you know what, you can't get arrested, but we'll make sure you never get a job again. We'll make sure you never get, you know, opportunities again. And what the fuck? You know, what kind of society is that? Right? Doesn't that sound like, hey, you know what? You're a certain skin color, you're a certain race. We're not going to let you get this opportunity. We're not going to let you talk again. I know there are different branches of very, you know, maybe a different tree or long branches away. But I mean, separation is separation. And I think the smarter you are, the more you can understand that if that's somebody else's opinions or words, that's their words and opinions. But we shouldn't throw stones at people for saying things. I just don't think that's true. Because sticks and stones is very real. At the end of the day, actions are worse than actual words. Even though words like the Capitol and Hitler can really do something, you know? Damn, bro, we got preachy. I got preachy.
Yeah, I mean, that was supposed to be the last bit, but then you had your last bit.
I just think that this is such a juicy topic, man, and we are people who are talking, you know. So I think we're also very different minded in those thingies, but you know, I just don't think that we're not gonna like fight each other because of this, you know.
No, I'm gonna kill you after this.
The next podcast is just gonna be
that show you gotta go to tonight. Beach is showing up alone, boy. That's it.
It's just shit is interesting, man. At the end of the day, we're just human beings, and all human beings are flawed. You know,
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. So, all right, but that's it.
Well, yeah. All right. For the next topic I got for us to change course here, grab the fucking wheel, turn that shit a whole 90 degrees.
I imagine everybody listening to the podcast, his eyes are wide open. It's like, all right, so 95% of the crowd is gonna kill me, and then 5% of the crowd that fucks with me is gonna be like, yo, fuck Javi. But at the end of the day, fuck you guys if you guys are trying to make this A and B thing or think that me and Javi are trying to argue or be political or anything. We just have our own opinions, and I mean, oof, you brought it up, Javi, so get ready for that.
Yeah, you know, I did it.
I figured, I was like, man, if this motherfucker brings this up, I was like gonna cut him off and be like, maybe we shouldn't do this shit. But I'm game, bro. I'm game. I'm motherfucking game, bitch. I will say whatever the fuck I want to say.
Well, to change course here, we're gonna talk about a heist that happened in Manhattan. Bags, right? So I'm gonna open this up with an anecdote.
Okay.
So this happened on a Thursday. Mm-hmm. I was driving upstate with my mom that day.
Okay.
And we crossed the Queensboro Bridge to get into Manhattan.
Hey.
Took us almost 45 minutes to get into Manhattan.
Traffic.
Hey. Packed.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm on the bridge, I could see that there are cop cars lined up down the street right off the exit of the bridge.
Okay.
And finally, as we get into Manhattan, we find that there's just more police everywhere. Okay. On every block, on every corner, there's just police cars with their sirens on, their lights on. At a certain point, they blocked off an entire block.
Jeez.
And we had to drive around that. It was really bad. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I downloaded the Citizen app because I wanted to know what the fuck was happening.
No, literally, what is going on?
Like, honestly. I downloaded the app, nothing. And I was like, yo, man, this is some bullshit.
Okay.
I was like, I need to figure out what's going on with this. Mm-hmm. And so I fucking...
Literally.
I'm Googling everything online. I'm finding nothing. And then later that day, I get the notification from Citizen that a bunch of thieves grabbed $48,000 worth in handbags in broad daylight in a Soho boutique heist.
You said $38,000?
48.
That's a lot of $1,000
in handbags alone.
Jesus Christ.
To break this down for you, they cleaned out a Celine store on Wooster Street just before 12:25 p.m.
Not Wooster Street.
Yep. On Wooster Street,
That's
my
my
guy.
favorite street.
Too bad. He got robbed.
They took the sign.
Not only that, they injured a security guard throughout the process.
That's fucked up.
And I have a pretty funny fact about that, but pretty much how the whole thing went down is that a few...
That was definitely not a bottle hitting the floor. I'm so sorry.
Is that a few of the thieves went into the store, they're browsing around, whatever, they're looking around the store, and it looks like they're about to leave the store. And so the security guard, he opens up the door for them, and they're about to walk out. Right at that moment, 3 other guys walk into the store, push past the guard, and the guard is trying to hold the door closed against them, trying to keep them out. The guys get through, and they injure the guard. What's really funny about the injury is that the guard injured his elbow and his thumb.
Not his thumb.
His thumb. He actually injured his thumb.
First I'm gonna cut out what's really funny about his injury. What? Javi thinks security guards getting injured is funny.
I mean, I read that and I was like, your thumb?
It's the other version of my leg.
Like,
my thumb.
My thumb. Like,
and then somebody, his thumb. Yes, my thumb.
I thought that was just the most randomest thing. I was like, really, what happened to your thumb? Did they break your thumb? Because if they broke your thumb, I'm pretty sure it would have said that.
Nah, you ever think about breaking a thumb? That shit probably hurts like a motherfucker, bro.
So I feel like they would have said that. The fact that it said that he injured his elbow and his thumb, I imagine he just kind of fell. He just kind of fell and like just laid on the ground and just held his thumb in one hand.
He had to make a fuck those bags.
I thought that was the most ridiculous fact that I found from this heist. I was like, wow.
I just want to give a quick rest in peace to the security guard.
He's still alive. He's still alive.
He's dead. Shut up.
His thumb is alive and well.
His thumb may be alive, but his reputation is ruined.
He's unlocking his phone with that shit if he has an Android.
Yeah, iPhone does that shit too. It used to.
Used to.
Yeah.
Used
Fuck
to.
Android.
Yo, man, what you trying to start another debate in the same fucking episode?
Oh, well, we don't debate here. We
don't debate here because I think we are. I think we fucking are.
Pew 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 pew. First of all, if you using Android, shut up.
If you're using Android, you are the cream of the crop. I love you guys. I want all you guys to fucking throw hate at Frankie and any iPhone user and fuck those green bubbles.
And all 3 of you guys using the Android guys, great. The rest of us, a million really fun iPhone people, will just laugh at you.
There are more Android users than iPhone users, bitch.
They're just
it's
more
52 to 48. I know the numbers, bitch.
There's more Androids in the trash that people haven't even given the pleasure to deactivate. That's why there seems like there's so much more.
Because there's variety in Android. You wish there were variety in
Variety
iPhone.
of
It's
system.
the same thing every day.
This is the show now. Of mine, iPhone and Android. I will say this. Our theme song sounds more like an Android theme song, you know, because it's so old and outdated. like the 8-bit music is so old and nobody uses it anymore. So I will say for sure, our theme song is Android influence. The audience was like, yeah, can y'all shut the fuck up? Like, can y'all tell me about these handbags, bro?
All I gotta say is that Frankie, you're not funny. Anyways, so what's interesting about this whole heist that went down? They ran away in a car. They
ran away in a car?
Yeah, they got into a car right outside the store and they fucking
so they Flintstone.
Pretty much. They fucking Flintstone their way out of there. And that's why they were blocking off blocks and streets and stuff in Manhattan, because they were trying to close off the city, lock down the city pretty much, and find these guys.
Okay.
And what's interesting about this heist is that it's not the first heist that's happened on Wooster Street.
Damn,
I know.
Bro, Wooster Street, bro.
I know. Yeah. Wooster Street, which is also home to high-end stores such as Gucci, Moschino, and things like that, and Louis Vuitton, whatever, has recently seen a number of big-time heists happening.
Okay.
Back in September, 3 crooks broke through 2 walls from a neighboring building to get into the What Goes Around Comes Around pop-up.
Got you. I do not know what that is, though. The walk around comes around. What's it called?
Goes around, comes around, pop up. I don't know what it is personally. I would imagine it's just a high end designer's pop up store.
God. And I imagine they don't make as much money as like Louis Vuitton, Gucci. Maybe they do. I don't know. Well,
they sold those sort of products in that pop up store.
Wouldn't you say if you're selling a bag for like $5,000, aren't you the real thief? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe those guys or women rob those bags and are gonna gift them for Valentine's Day. Oh, you know what?
My God,
honestly,
so nice.
Romance and love always wins.
That's a really nice way to spin that story, but I'm sure that's not what happened.
Let's root for capitalism to thrive much more. Fuck love.
What's also interesting about that September heist is that once they broke through those 2 walls and robbed the pop-up store, they loaded up their car and returned 2 hours later to steal some more.
Yo, I'm starting to think Wooster St is just not wise.
They did this at 3 a.m. and came back at 5:45 a.m. and just stole some more.
Interesting.
From this whole heist, they stole $385,000 in designer bags and clothes.
Damn, bro, the more you talk about this, the more I root for these thieves. I could give a shit less about Gucci.
Like I said, they stole Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all those high brands and things like that.
If this was like Little Lou's bags, like real local business, and they sell that they handmade their bags. But bro, like, on some real shit, bro, like I walked into Louis Vuitton stores like 3 times and I'm just like, you know what, this bag is too expensive. I really want it, but this is just too goddamn. I wish I could just take it. They would literally just replace it. You know what I'm trying to say? It's crazy. I seen black shirts for like $300, straight just black shirts. $300.
Stupid.
Hey man, that's capitalism. And that's fashion. I can't hate completely because something about a logo, something about a brand, you just want that brand name stuff. I try to go down. I try to do it. You're like, get that shit out of here.
Nah.
I'll take it.
Well, the last fact I got about that, which I thought was a really pretty fun fact with that September heist, is that one of those 3 thieves was dressed up in a suit and tie.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
There are pictures of the thieves. Yeah. I figured we'd put that on the supplemental stuff too.
You know what? Scandalous, but fashionable.
Yeah.
Snaps off to him.
You gotta dress in high fashion to steal fashion, baby.
It's only right, baby. That's my Mike Myers impression. No,
man.
That's crazy.
That happened in broad daylight.
Yeah, I just straight up don't care. I think that story is interesting or something, but fuck it.
I just thought that was such a cool story, and I had the anecdote to it, and it just reminded me of GTA so much. I know you've been playing so much GTA.
Love GTA, and you were nearby the situation, so it's cool. But I'd be more upset if they robbed the food bazaar, because I know many people rely on food bazaar. Like, where's the watermelons? Some guy in a suit, man. Some guy.
There's a deficiency on cranberries.
What do you mean?
There's a deficiency on cranberries.
Like they're not up to par, or there's not enough of them.
There's not enough. Okay, they can't make enough cranberries.
What do you mean?
The farms that make cranberries, it's just been bad crops recently.
You mean that grow cranberries?
What did I say?
Make.
What's the difference?
You can't make a cranberry.
They made them. They fucking made them.
You make a car, you grow a tree. If that makes any sense.
I made a tree.
You can make a baby. You don't fuck. You know what I mean? You can't make a grape. You know what I mean? I guess with science you could splice. I just really like the word splice. Where the fuck is this podcast going? That's funny, man. I like that story though. It's a pretty fucking hilarious story. Good for you, man.
It's a small story, but it's a bit of local news. I figured throw it in there.
I like it, man. I like it very much. So
next time you play GTA Online, just think about that.
I'm gonna dress my guy in a suit, or go on Wooster St and go to town. Go to town. Make sure Javi don't go get to his destination. That's crazy, bro.
But could you imagine that? Could you imagine teaming up with a bunch of people and saying we're gonna rob a store in broad daylight?
I've seen a lot of videos where people they just do that. They just kind of like bum rush fancy high end store and they just take everything. And again, like with these high end stores, you can only feel so bad because then you're like, oh, maybe the manager's at fault or they get fired. But I think in any situation where your store is getting robbed, they tell you not to do anything. You know, are you gonna risk your life for these bags? You know, these bags that are.
You should never risk your life for your job.
Facts, unless it's a limited edition Gucci belt. No, yeah, fuck that. If you're behind the register and they're they're not even threatening you, they could potentially threaten you for taking your stuff. I mean, to each his own though, because in Texas they'll pull a gun at you if you try to take anything because it's illegal.
It's interesting that I said that. I already forgot what I said. Oh. You threw me off with the America thing.
America. Can I tell you something?
You've been throwing me off this whole episode, man.
That's my evil plan, Joe Rogan. Little do you know, this motherfucker hired me. He was like, yo, don't know how to talk shit about me. I love saying the N-word. No, I was just kidding. No, actually in Texas, this happened around February 3rd, I think so. There was a city water boil notice. You know what that is?
Water boil notice?
Yeah, so I would have to actually look it up a little more. But essentially, let me tell you, when I went to Austin, Texas, right? I went with Beatrice, right? And my partner. And we went together. And what she said to me, she said, hey, before we cook anything, we were in an Airbnb, very beautiful Airbnb. She said, let's make sure we can drink the water. I was like, what? I was like, what is water? But I've heard before when you go to different places, the water can be either good or bad and this and that. And so
New York City has some of the cleanest water.
It does. Fluoride all day, baby. So basically what I've heard very randomly is that recently in Texas, they've had to notify all the people, especially in Austin, which is getting much bigger in population and stuff like that. The CDC actually issued a boil water advisory, right? And what that is that if your city local health officials issue a boil water advisory, this is off the website itself, it says you should use bottled water or boiled tap water because boiled water advisory means your community's water has or could have germs that can make you sick.
Oh, wow.
And this happened in Austin, Texas not too long ago. I don't know how, I mean, I think it's stopped by now, but it's just interesting how that could happen. And I mean, this is because it has to do with Joe Rogan because he's moved there and ever since, I mean, the population has increased and a lot of people are venturing over there. And I mean, I've been there. It's fucking beautiful, man. It's
I hear good things about Austin, especially.
Bro, it's such an amazing time. People say great things about Dallas and San Antonio. Bro, people say, oh, go to this place. They have the best this and that, right? Bro, Texas has the best barbecue I've ever in my whole goddamn life.
It makes sense to me.
Bro, sorry vegetarians, but they got that shit, bro. But yeah, I just want to bring it up because I thought that was really interesting. And imagine that happened in New York City. I don't think it could, right? I think we invest too much money in making sure our water is clean here, right? Because like you said, it's the best, some of the best in the world.
Yeah. I mean, we have some of the best water. I don't know if in the world or if in the country. Probably
like within like big cities, maybe, or some shit. But when I was in Chicago, I didn't think about it. I didn't drink the tap water either, but I always kind of buy bottled water when I travel elsewhere and shit, you know, because for the fact, when I got to a grocery store in Chicago, we were thinking about what water should we buy. I swear to God, I said, let's buy this one. It looks the most patriotic.
Oh my God. You really are an American. You really are an American.
I was just making the jokes, but I guess I am. That's my MAGA voice, by the way. My bad. I'm just having fun today, man. This is a fun podcast.
This is a wacky one.
It is, and we started off way too serious, and that's a lot of my fault too. Because I mean,
yeah, everyone blame Frankie. I was just trying to have fun.
I got you, Javi. Yeah, blame me. but I just. Man, conversations that are serious shouldn't have to, you know, lead to just more hostile situations. You know, I think this is important what we're doing. Just fuck it, man. Like, because we obviously, you know, have different opinions on that whole thing. Not completely, but just, you know, I think this is cool. It is a cool way to like continue off on a big issue, you know. And yeah. I know I'm going back and forth with the segment of emotions and stuff, but. It's just awesome, man. I just it's fun to talk to somebody where you don't have to walk on eggshells, every time you say something. I think more and more as we get further into a metaverse future and a social media future.
I almost brought up the metaverse this episode.
I wish you did. I mean, we always can.
Yeah.
I bought Facebook stock. That shit plunged. Fuck.
Yeah, I really wanted to bring that up. That was insane.
Bro, I bought it for like 300 plus and it went to 223. I was like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make some money. But I'm sure it'll spike back up. Usually they say buy the dip. I bought before the dip, and if you don't know stocks, you're like, shut the fuck up. And if you do, well, fuck myself. But yeah, that sucked ass, and we can talk about that next time. But the metaverse is gonna be wild, bro.
Oh yeah,
the metaverse is gonna be wild.
Well,
be on the lookout for our future virtual reality podcast.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
in the future, and
we should film an episode in VR.
I would love to, man. And I know we're not the only ones to ever discuss that, but hey, man, we'll make it happen, bro. I would love to do that, bro. Oh man, yo, if you're still listening, you're a fucking legend, and I love you because we're not even talking about news no more, but. If you've never ventured into VR, I mean, I actually tried it for the first, and I mean, I've tried like the Android ones and all that stuff, but here in the studio, which I call, I tried the VR which one do you have?
The Valve Index.
Which is a really high end one, right?
Yeah. So
I tried it for the first time with the controls and everything. And I've seen like videos of VR chat, virtual reality chat, which is basically, the best way I describe it is AIM. For VR.
I mean, it's the early stages of the metaverse, really, to be honest.
Yeah, seriously. And the way I look at it is that if we both had headsets on right now and we had like different, like our figurines of us looking at one another, we could easily do this podcast as avatars of ourselves. So I'm just excited to venture into that just to see how it would look,
Yeah.
That'd be fucking awesome.
Well, but besides all of that,
yes,
we're getting on to our third topic of the day.
Nice.
And
thank God, bro. Can I say I thought those were both topics at once. Oh. Yeah, that's why I was prolonging it because I'm having too much fun today. My bad, bro. All right, what's up?
No,
it's a story, right?
So I wrote a short story a couple years ago,
awesome.
And because people who know me, I'm a writer. I like to write stories and whatnot, and I wrote a 2-page flash fiction is what it's called. Flash fiction is sort of its own small genre.
Awesome.
And so I wrote a short story about suburbia and what it feels like to grow up and live in suburbia.
Can you define suburbia for those that don't know? And me.
Just like the suburbs.
Oh, okay.
Like people,
my bad.
Yeah, that kind of lifestyle and whatever.
Gotcha. It just sounded more complex. I figured suburbs, but then I was like, what's the EA part? So now that you guys know, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome, Frankie.
Nice. All right.
Well, so this is titled, Have You Ever Been So Bored?
Nice.
Have you ever been so bored that you wanted to break your own arm? No? Well, you will. Welcome to Middletown. Nothing ever happens here because it's, well, in the middle of nowhere. Get it? Following along? Okay, great. Anyways, have you ever been so bored that you just throw your keys out into the yard? No? Well, it's a good way to keep yourself busy. The grass is thick and mixed with deer shit, empty Dorito bags, and empty Walmart brand water bottles. People tend to throw their trash out into other people's yards because there's nothing else to do. Find new keys yet? Have you ever been so bored that you go buy 2 6-packs from the gas station where 8 people have won the lottery in the last 20 years? 1 pack to pour out the window on your drive back to the house, bottle by bottle, and the other to pour into your pool, just so you can see what happens when you spill alcohol into a pool. Have you ever been so bored that you burn memorabilia next to your outdoor fireplace in front of the pool? Memorabilia burns deeper than wood and is much easier to kindle. Plus, burning memorabilia doesn't smell as much as burning wood, so you don't have to disturb the neighbors in your cul-de-sac. But you wouldn't mind disturbing them. It is a Tuesday night after all. Their kids have school tomorrow and it's the middle of May, so the windows must be open. Why aren't you disturbing them? Anyways, have you ever been so bored that you finally take your uncle's suggestion from years ago when you were young and take a towel up to the roof and see how far you can go? You're not so sure which kind of towel would be most effective, your thick orange blanket or your thin gray towel. But you remember that you're in Middletown, so you decide that you'll test both. You take the towels from the basement and go up to your bedroom on the 2nd floor. You open the window and climb out into the roof of your house and reach the top. You decide that you'll jump towards your pool, This way, if you do make any distance, you'll land in water. You decide you'll use your thick orange blanket because you figure the thickness will help with catching more wind on this clear night. Your thick orange blanket is also your favorite. You envision what's probably the best way to jump, directly from the top of the roof or to slide down and jump off the edge. The latter it is. You hold the corners of the blankets ready to hold it in a parachute position, and you hop slightly forward to start sliding. But when you reach the edge of the roof, your foot catches the gutter and you swing downwards. You quickly turn your body and slam the fire pit table on your pool deck with your right side. Because you landed on top of your arm, and because it caught the metal edge of the fire pit, you broke it. It snapped loudly and the fire pit squeezed out from underneath you and you hit the deck. You're in pain. You roll over. You look down at your right arm and see the bulge of bone that is poking out of your skin. You reach for the orange blanket that landed next to you with your left hand and used it to cover your right arm. Fortunately, you're a lefty, so reaching for your phone is of no concern. You call 911 and get them to send an ambulance. You hang up on the operator after you tell her your address and before you could answer any more of her questions. You rest your left arm down and look up at the night sky, and you wait. And the only thing you can hope for is in that time, you wait for the EMTs to arrive, you don't get bored.
I just want to get a little snap off of that. I got lost in that, and I took like a couple notes while you're reading that. First of all, very well written, and I got entranced as you read because I think that's. Can I say what I think that was what was the purpose within that literature?
Go ahead.
So, as you're talking about the suburbs and stuff like that, ultimately what I get is what I really like about what you just said is the gas station that has the lotto tickets that's been selling for 20 years, but only 8 people have won. And that to me reminds me of hope and how much you don't have a chance to win the lottery. You know, it's like they've been selling for 20 years, which means 65 times 20. I mean, how many days is that for only 8 people to win? You know, so you kind of and you're living in the suburbs, which already is like a high end way of living, or at least a neutral family way of living. You know, 4 members, a dog, a house. And then you're still reaching for wanting to be rich, you know, when you if you're living in the suburbs, you kind of have that. When you say burning memorabilia lasts longer than it would be burning like wood, right? Yeah. I thought that was really dope. Because that reminded me of Breaking Bad. For those who haven't seen it, damn, if I ruin it for you, sucks for you. There's a moment where he just gets a pile of money. A bunch of money, and he puts it into his barbecue grill in the backyard of his suburban house in Arizona next to his pool, and he sets his money on fire, about like 50 grand or much more. And he's there like thinking that in his demise of the mind, he wants to burn it and be angry. And as he sees his money engulf in flames, he's like, what have I done? And he tries to pat it out with his shirt in his hands, and he just throws all the money in the pool, you know? And I was like, damn, bro, like, no matter how much you think, like, kind of like the Joker when he burns the money. Like, when Joker burned the money in Dark Knight, he meant that shit, you know? But Walter White in Breaking Bad, played amazingly by Bryan Cranston, when he burned that money in his suburban house off the meth he made, you know, he was like, no, I can't get rid of this money. It's too important, because that's the whole goal right now, money, right? So he mentioned 2 times money, which is, you know, important in America for sure, everywhere. And, I like how you said, I don't want to disturb the neighbors, but why wouldn't I? I mean, it's only Tuesday night, you know? And that reminds me, like, how boring it could be to live in the suburbs. It reminds me of, you ever seen Cat in the Hat? Where they all live in the same house and the same thing and wear the same thing. And Alec Baldwin, for some reason, thankfully he didn't shoot nobody.
Imagine if you shot the cat.
That'd be mad funny, bro. Mad funny. First of all, that movie is hilarious. I don't know. I love that movie. Shout out to Mike Myers. Yeah, baby. That's my Mexican Mike Myers. But what I really like is that what you said when you were expecting to fall into the pool. And you hit the ground instead, right? And you break. What do you say? You break a leg or something like that?
Broken arm on the fire pit.
To me, and this is just my intake. You know, they say that what you read and what you intake is all about how you interpret it, right? Like a painting and books. I don't know who they is, but I look at it as more what your expectation of the suburbs is gonna be. You know, you say, I'm going to live in the suburbs. I'm going to have a great life and I'm going to do this and I'm going to be successful. And then you get to the suburbs, aka like the pool you want to jump into. And then you're about to jump into the suburbs and then you just end up breaking an arm. And you're like, this is boring. This is uneventful. This is all assimilated in terms of everything being uniform. I mean, everything being the same. And really what your expectations of the suburb is more so just not.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't know if that's the message you were trying to send in particular, but as I was hearing you, that's what I take in. I just take in that I think this depiction of what we're supposed to end up living to be successful as isn't, you know? And for some reason that just brings me to I don't want to take one vacation a year. You know? I want to take as much vacations as I want. And I don't know, man. That was so cool you read that shit because I hope it instilled something in your guys' mind if you're hearing this. But for me, man, I just want more than a regular job. I want to live. You feel me?
Yeah.
And living isn't just like traveling. It could just be doing anything but a regular 9 to 5. You feel me? So that was a very beautiful piece you wrote, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of give a bit of insight as to why I wrote this. I mean, when I was in high school, my family and I moved upstate.
Oh yeah.
And so I had some experience of living upstate, and Middletown is where we moved to. So where I lived upstate, there were no sidewalks, there were no street lights or anything like that. It's just you had to drive to get anywhere. You have to just basically be at your house or be at the mall with your friends. There wasn't much to do upstate.
Okay.
And my family and I, my brothers, my cousin and my brother, I call my cousins my brothers.
Yeah.
My brothers.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All my brothers, we were all just really bored up there. We played a lot of video games all the time, just watched a lot of movies because there wasn't much to do. And we just kind of felt that was our experience. And even as I was trying to sort of live in my life of being upstate, I found out that other people just kind of live the same way. I remember asking someone once, what's the most like dangerous or crazy thing you've done? And they couldn't think of anything for the life of them. And this isn't to generalize upstate or suburbia or whatever the case is, but more often than not, you're not doing much in suburbia.
Yeah.
You're just kind of going to school, going home, staying with your family, and just that's it. The stores and places and clubs close at 8 and 9 p.m. for a reason there. Yeah. And so I wrote this because I was always bored upstate. I always was just so in this constant stage of wanting to do something, but I couldn't do anything because there was nothing to do up there. And so I wrote, this is a reflection of that. I wrote this to kind of say, this is my what if. This is what goes on in my head because I have nothing else to do.
And you wrote, that's crazy. I get flashbacks of when I went to Connecticut when I was younger, right? I went to Connecticut with my friend Chris and Abraham, right? And the reason I bring it up is because, you know, I'm from New York City my whole life, right? So all I know is, you know, hey, fuck out the way. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, fuck you. And this past week, I've almost got hit by like 2 cars.
Yeah.
I deadass almost got hit by 1 car. I gave him the finger. I was like, fuck you, bitch. And then literally today, I'm walking down the street and I'm crossing. It's my right of way. I'm crossing the street and this truck just pulls up. I'm like, yo. And he just looks at me like, acknowledges me. And then he just keeps going. I'm like, these motherfuckers don't care, you know?
Yeah.
But even that sounds more exciting than a week upstate, you know. And when I got to Connecticut, we sit down on the floor because there's no furniture in the house. We're staying at his mom's house, right? We eat Chinese food, which Chinese food sucks over there compared to New York City. Not that it was bad, it's just nothing like New York City Chinese food.
I believe you.
Oh man. And so the next day, you know, well, that very night we got there. Before I talk about the day, we're in the front yard, you know, because there's a front yard. Unlike New York City, you get rats and garbage cans. And, you know, you look up and the stars are beautiful, man. Stars are fucking gorgeous. It's still a little polluted with light, but not as much where you can't see the stars. And I was in a big empty field where essentially there was just a block of houses. And to my right and left, the left were railroad tracks and more houses. And the right was just pathway of dark woods where you would drive by, you know?
Yeah.
I've never been used to that much darkness. And I'll tell you a funny story. We for some reason we had like fireworks or something.
Okay.
And we like light them around the neighborhood, right? Like idiots. And then for some reason, like these kids, the older kids, I imagine because they're driving, they start chasing us in the car, right? And we're like, what the fuck, right? And so we run into the railroad tracks. And then I'll never forget, man. The kids just throw a water bottle. They're like, "Shut the fuck up! Don't do that shit here." But not like in a New York City, like, "Motherfucker, don't do that shit here. I'm gonna really fuck you up." More like, "Get out of here, nerds!" And they throw a water bottle and they hit my friend Chris in the neck, and he was like, "Oh!" It was so funny, but we were like, "What the?" We were like panicking because we were a little younger. The very next day, we wake up. It's sunny Connecticut morning, very boring. And I mean, I was having fun because I was young with my friends, and we see an old couple on a swinging chair on their porch, right? The chair breaks while the lady's sitting on it, and she falls. No. She goes clunk, and I'm there watching like, we gotta help. I mean, I saw her fall. I gotta help her, right? So I go over her. I'm like, "You okay?" She's like, "We're okay." We're like, "No, you're not, but you said so we're gonna leave you alone." And I'm like, "Man, I'm hungry." So we're like, "Whatever, let's go get some food." So we're trying to find food everywhere. Bitch, there ain't no food to eat around Connecticut. I'm trying to find a deli. I didn't realize that delis are such a New York beauty.
Yeah.
Or at least a Wawa in PA, you know?
The closest deli to me upstate was like a 10-minute drive.
Yeah, gas stations are the shit over there, I guess so, you know?
Yeah.
And so basically, so we'll walk around and I tell my friends, "You know what I want, man?" They're like, "What?" "I just want some wheat thins." So we hit up every grocery store. Nobody has wheat thins. Nobody. And then I go to one store and they're like, "Oh, this is our last box." We deadass went around the whole area just to find those wheat thins. But the most amazing part of this, like,
wheat thins deficiency. Oh my God.
Which indeed you do make. You don't grow wheat thins.
Nah, I grow wheat thins.
I guess you grow wheat.
I grow wheat thins. I don't know what you're doing. Your wheat thins are probably whacked.
But the beauty of being around the area, man, fuck, I wish I remember what movie we've seen. And I'm going to find out because I'm going to put it up in the supplementary stuff. But one of my favorite memories, right now I'm not even looking at Javi. I'm just staring off into space as I'm talking to him for the audience listening at home because I'm thinking back. We go walk around the town because it's a very, very, very small town. We go into a comic book shop.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Comic book shop, video game shop, and like old systems and stuff. But very local. Like as local as it gets. Like these guys literally started up a comic book shop in Connecticut where there's a small ass town, right? So, we're just looking around, looking at comics. We're like, "Oh, cool." Little did I know I'd be talking about comics in the fucking future. So fucking cool. But I was more intrigued about the old video games. I was like, "No fucking way. This is so cool." It was like a GameStop, but like, ye old GameStop.
Okay. Ye old.
And they're like, "What else do we do?" And we're like, "We don't know." So we bought tickets to see a movie. And we bought tickets. And later on, when we went to go inside the theater, they didn't even check our tickets. We just walked in. And we sat down. We're like, "Yo, they didn't even check our tickets." We're like, "What the fuck?" But in New York City, they'll check your tickets no matter what, and they'll be like, "What the?" Everybody has to be checked. But they just let us walk in. We were like, "Yo, we didn't have to pay and this and that." And I just felt like I never watched the Stranger Things, but I know they, But I felt like the Goonies. I don't know if you've seen the Goonies before. Yeah. Like I just felt like I didn't get that experience enough as a kid, But I'm happy that it was like for a little short trip rather than it being my childhood, Not that no hate to anybody that grew, but that's why grew up that way. But that's why New York City is such a beautiful place to come from, because it's a playground and it's just full of devils and angels and mediocres and professionals and fucking just all around people, And I think the more I hear that story and the more you talk about that, like I'm not saying like you live in a boring ass neighborhood. No, it's more like we very much appreciate where you're from because of it. And I've recently talked to somebody who gets misconstrued for like a weird individual, right? Though we both know. I'll tell you who after the show ends.
Okay.
And he gets judged a lot. But this guy has been to Italy, London. He's been to France is but he's in London, Paris, Italy, and then I asked him, I was like, "Did you see the Eiffel Tower? Did you do all that?" He's like, "Man, I did all that stuff." And at the end of the day, I just ended up going on Tinder and just wanted to find some stuff to do. And I was like, "All right." And then he was like, "But it's one of my favorite cities of all times." I was like, "What?" He said, "New York City." And I was like, "That's fucking cool, man." So, damn, bro. That honestly speaking, I think the beauty of art is that it makes conversation sprout. And I don't know, something about your writing just now, it just makes me want to preach. Like, it makes me want to speak poetically, And I really appreciate that shit because I could go on for hours, but I'm just now as I spoke, like I went back to my, I would say like high school self, and I was in my shoes just now, and I got to relive those moments, and Whew, man. That's a very beautiful thing you just did to my brain right there. Thank you.
I've always had people try and say to me before that, like, oh, they love upstate, they love the outdoors and things like that. If it were up to them, they would live there.
Yeah.
Well, do it.
There's no other.
No one's stopping you from doing that, but you haven't left for a reason.
Exactly.
Suburbia is a nice place to visit, but it's not a great place to stay.
Definitely not.
And when I wrote this, I had a peer of mine bring up about how they felt like this was a lot about nihilism. I don't know if you know the definition to nihilism.
Somebody who thinks life is purposeless, right? It's just you know, nice. I'm so hyped because I didn't know what that meant, and because of Joe Rogan's podcast and Jordan Peterson. All jokes aside, Jordan Peterson speaks a lot on nihilism, and I was like, let me Google what that is. And this is literally, I'm not trying to bring that up again, but yeah, it's interesting. I Googled it, and it just happens you bring it up now, and I'm so happy that I know, so I can converse with you. Yeah. So that's awesome. I mean, you would have explained to me anyway, but I'm very happy. So that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been curious of that because I'm atheist myself, and so I've always been curious if I'm sort of a nihilist in that certain aspect because. A lot of the times I don't care about things. Yeah. And it's so hard to care about things sometimes personally. Yeah. Which is such a difficult thing. And so it always makes me curious. I'm like, am I just nihilistic by nature? Is this just like who I am? Am I just kind of like, none of this matters. We're all gonna fucking blow up. It doesn't matter. And so for me to have a chance to write things like this, and when people like my peers bring up like, oh, this is sort of a nihilistic view on things, it really makes me think outside of myself and really makes me look at myself and say, am I a nihilistic person? But I mean, and it's like you said, art just sprouts that sort of conversation, and I think it's just such an interesting thing to sort of reflect on yourself. Yeah, because when you write anything,
you reflect on yourself.
Yeah, even if you're writing in your diary, that's a direct.
Everybody should be writing. They say it's really good for you, and and I think what I want to like say to you in terms of are you nihilistic or not? I think, and this is just me because this is like now you're really reaching to my soul, which I'll preach a little, but. I think the reason I don't think, and of course it's my opinion, you're nihilistic, or if you listening right now think you are nihilistic, I think what defies nihilism is love. And I think the reason that it does that is because there's no purpose to love. You know, there's purpose to shitting, there's purpose to eating, to breathing, to functioning society, for, you know, to survive another day. Those are all just functions we just kind of have to do. Go to work, you know, eat food, you know, drink water. But to love, you know, to write, to love to read, to love your family, to love your, you know, animals that you have around, or just love seeing a nice day. I think that's what kind of contradicts nihilism. You know, I don't think God instills love. I don't think faith instills love. But I think love is one of those urges that you can't argue with, which is like a philosophical thing, you know, where they say, what is to not be argued? And I think one of those things is breathing is you cannot argue, but loving is also one you can't, you know? And for centuries and decades, as long as this world has been alive, many things have affected history, you know, because man and woman are such, you know, mediocres in terms of the universe. But I think one of the most influential things in the world, such as war and, you know, change and all that stuff, is love. Hitler, he killed himself with who in the bunker with her? And his wife. Yeah. You know? And I think that's a huge thing. You know, why would he do that? A man who decimated a whole generation of people, you know? Why would he be with the one he loves at the end of it? You know? Yeah. And they say Hitler, when he started everything, a big purpose of it was because he was denied from art school. That may not have been all of it, of course, but his love for art, you know, it may have been defiled, you know. And I don't mean to bring up Hitler so randomly, you know, but I think I mean it's interesting that you even bring that because sort of the neglect or defilement of art against Hitler kind of relates to what we're going to talk about for the movie. Oh, absolutely. And oh man, yes, and I can't wait to get to that. Oh, shit gonna get heavy, but I think eventually we should have more conversations like this, because I don't think this is more of a we should talk about news and stuff like that. And this is kind of my topic of, this is a topic that I don't get to a lot. I kind of only get to it within my own mind. You know, I think when I look at myself, I think love for me has always been one of those things that has been in the center of it all, you know?
Okay.
And I think that as people, we can't deny how much it controls us, you know? And I think the real evil people on earth, the real like mass shooters or serial killers or like, you know, quote unquote terrible people, you know, I think nihilism hovers them, but I think it's just difficult to really go within that because it's hard to claim yourself for that. Even atheism for me, and this is something that I've heard in other places where atheism is for me hard to accept because I used to think I was an atheist, you know?
Okay.
But I look at it more as, I don't know what's out there, but I do know that within the reach of life in our lifetimes, we only have what we think exists or not and what's real, like science and this and that. But I do know that the impacts of religion are very real, you know? And to me, Jesus might not be real, you know? He must be a cool guy, whatever, you know? But his
got a great set of hair.
Facts. Jesus is black, first of all. You could take Santa, but Jesus is black. Quote me on that. Motherfucker, what I'm trying to say is that religious may not be real because it's pretty outrageous. But its impact is, you know?
Without a doubt.
And I just feel like this is just, in the best way, this is an open-ended conversation. So I think it's cool. And it's very, very great of you to share that with me because it just makes me like ponder. You know, it makes me wonder more. And bro, I would love to hear more of your readings because that was beautiful, bro. That was beautiful. I love this.
I was thinking if we should add some music in the background during my reading or something.
Why Titanic? Why not? I hope I had that note right so you can understand that shit. This might be our weirdest podcast, but like not in a bad weird, you know? It's
definitely a wacky one for sure.
He's like, are these guys racist? or are these guys misinformatives? Or are they just hippies as well? All of the above. No, I'm just kidding. Not the racist part. It was for the sake of the joke, bitches, man. Calm down. No, but I think that writing was great. I think even with that, man, like I just think about that stuff I've written that maybe I won't say on the podcast, but I'll share with you in the future because I think you're right. The writing that you have shown me right now is inspired me a lot. And even reading Seth Rogen's book, Yearbook, that's what it's called, Yearbook. Man, I was amazed. I want to lend you that book. So I really hope that we can do a Patreon soon about books because that's my goal this year, to read so much more books. Like I want to have the shelf behind me and people come in, did you read those books? I'm like,
hell yeah.
Hell
fucking yeah.
Hit my cigar. You know, I'm quite an intellectual myself. and I think for anybody that's writing, and again, speaking, writing, singing, rapping, painting, whatever you do, man, put that shit out in the world because it will impact somebody else, you know? And I hope if you're listening to this, I don't care how old you are, what you look like, and what your capabilities are in all forms, follow your dreams, you know?
Yeah, I would say the general theme for this episode is art.
Yeah, man.
Because we've talked about Joe Rogan, Neil Young, and Spotify. We've talked about fashion, technically.
Yeah, technically. Wooster Street?
Wooster Street.
Shout out to Wooster Street.
We talked about fashion, technically.
Yeah.
Bit of a stretch, I know. But technically. And on top of that, we're talking about actual writing. And this is art in itself. So there's a general theme going on, especially with the movie that we're going to be talking about. Today's episode is all about art and creative expression and just getting yourself out there.
Yes, sir.
If you have something you want to put out there, do it.
Yeah, man.
I know we say that a lot on this show.
Yeah, but we really mean it. I mean, we're already up to episode 6, right? This is our 6th episode, man. And to us, that seems like forever. On some real shit. So realistically, man, follow your fucking dreams because anything can come from it. And yeah, man. So, damn.
So listen, it's that time of the day again.
Woo.
we're at the final segment of the show.
Yep.
It's got to end eventually. I know, folks.
I'm having a good ass time today, man. So let's do it.
So we're here at the A.M.C. section. We're talking about movies for this week.
Last week, what did we cover?
Last week, we covered albums. We talked about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles.
What an amazing album. But we must move on. And now that we're on movies, what movie are we talking about today?
Boy, we talking about Whiplash.
Oh, man. Which came out in 2014?
2014, written and directed by Damien Chazelle, and who is someone that I admire a lot, actually.
Okay.
This guy wrote this movie and made this movie during his 20s.
Wow.
So pretty early in his life, and he was able to make this movie.
It's in his 20s?
Yeah.
What was the name again?
Damien Chazelle.
Jesus Christ.
It's not his first movie. His first movie was Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, which came out in 2009. This came out in 2014. What's interesting about this is that he didn't have the funding to make this movie. So in 2013, he made a short film of this movie, put it into the Sundance Film Festival, and through that, he was able to get the funding to actually make this into a full-on movie.
Jesus Christ. Which, real quick, I think with Quentin Tarantino, when he wanted to make Reservoir Dogs, he sold a short story that he wrote, and he made enough money to film Reservoir Dogs in the future. So I just like that, and I'm gonna try that shit in the future too. I want to write one of my scripts into a book so I can sell and eventually make a movie. But I think it's a very nice and maybe informative solution to future filmmakers to do that in order to make their films. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Damien Chazelle. If any of you guys catch that name immediately, you'll know that Damien Chazelle is also the writer and director behind La La Land, as well as First Man. And La La Land came out in 2016. First Man came out in 2018.
Hey, power editing. Damn, I fucked it up. The whole point of that was so you guys wouldn't hear the noise that happened. So sorry. My drunk ass. Anyway, continue.
In 2018.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you ever seen La La Land. It's a great, fantastic movie, I think.
Actually, so when both those movies came out, there was a controversy, right, with the whole announcement of awards. They announced it for Moonlight, and then they gave it to La La Land, right? Yeah. The interesting thing about that, I went to the theaters. You know, I'm just like a bar. I go to a theater by myself a lot. You know, I used to before. I would get dumb high, smoke a joint, walk into a theater, be that guy, which is a great person to be, because that's the best way to enjoy a film. You know, intoxicated is what I'm trying to say. Everybody can enjoy a film in their own way, but I think when you're a little under the influence, you just take in all those little moments a little better, right? And I was like, which one should I see? Moonlight and La La Land, right? And I was like, let me see Moonlight. Fuck it. No specific reason. I was just like, let me just see Moonlight. And I was like, holy shit, this movie's deep, bro. Have you seen Moonlight before?
I have seen Moonlight.
It's a deep ass movie. And as you can, like, I'm pretty sure you agree, it's a deep ass movie.
Yeah.
And La La Land, I've never seen it, but I really wanted to see La La Land because I thought the way they depicted, like, the shooting itself of it, like the imagery and stuff, it was so throwback. It was so beautiful. It looked really like Disney-like, but human beings, you know? And I was very like, that's awesome. But I just said, fuck it, let me see Moonlight. And I was like, whoa. You know? But they were both, I mean, I didn't see La La Land yet. I've seen snippets of how it's been filmed, and it's awesome. But Moonlight was a very strong movie too. And I think, despite that whole controversy, which I think was blown out of proportion just a little bit, you know, I think they're terrible, not terrible, great films.
Yeah, what's also interesting about those movies too is that the music behind Whiplash was done by Justin Hurwitz. Okay. Justin Hurwitz also did the music to La La Land, First Man, and Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench.
Okay.
So he and Damien Chazelle have been working together pretty much for their whole careers.
Wow.
What's interesting about that too is that, especially for La La Land, Justin Hurwitz won a lot of awards. He won a lot of awards for Best Original Soundtrack, Best Song, things like that. And so Damien Chazelle knows who he's working with. He knows what he's doing. So just to throw you some facts out there, this movie had a budget of $3.3 million. The box office, only $49 million. Didn't make a lot of money.
Only 49 million.
That's still less than
Really?
the budget. That's less than the budget of other movies.
True. But in terms of the budget for the movie, it's a lot of money, right?
I mean, 3.3 mil is a pretty low budget.
Yeah. No, I'm saying like profit wise, in terms of the original budget, that's a lot of money to make off of it, or not really?
Not really. I found out that it is one of the lowest grossing movies to be nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, okay. My old wow just went to okay. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, good to hear.
So it didn't make a lot of money in the box office, but that didn't stop it from winning 5 Oscars in total.
Wow.
On top of that, J.K. Simmons has won 47 awards for his role as Fletcher in the film.
What a fantastic.
And one of them including Best Supporting Actor.
What other roles has he played? Spider-Man?
I mean, he was J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man.
My dumbass kept thinking he was the Green Goblin, but that's Willem Dafoe. And then I'm like, no, I understand that he is the reporter, right? The Spider-Man, right? Like, yep. Okay, cool, my bad. I sounded more like Willem Dafoe on that, but I meant the reporter. I'm just sorry, because when I saw his face all bald and shit, I was like, what? Which one are you?
Which one are you?
which I'm gonna say this, bro. If he wasn't white, that sentence could sound terrible. I'll just let that be. And I didn't pick my nose, bitches. I scratched it. So, that's some Seinfeld shit, if you know what I'm talking about. It's an episode where he scratches his nose like this, right?
Okay.
And some girl pulls up on the side, right? And she's like, he's picking his nose. Well, she pulls up on this side, right? Well, and he's like, he's picking his nose, but he's really just scratching his nose. I'm going off topic. Anyway. So what was his name again? The actor that plays what's his name? Terrence Fletcher?
Terrence Fletcher is the character. Mm-hmm. He's played by J.K. Simmons. Okay. And alongside J.K. Simmons is the main character lead, played by Miles Teller.
Gotcha.
And the love interest is played by Melissa Benoist, I believe is how her last name is pronounced. I could be wrong. Fun fact about Melissa Benoist is that she's also Supergirl in the CW shows.
Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense, because I'm thinking about both of them. I didn't watch Superwoman or Supergirl?
Supergirl.
But I can see how they look very similar.
Yeah.
Like trailers and shit. Nice.
And I just wanted to point out that this movie, a couple of other, like I pulled up some trivia. So this is just pulling out trivia. Yeah, this is the segment of the show. It's Trivia with Javi.
Trivia. Tribute to Whiplash. I couldn't think of another T word. Okay.
So something I found out was that all of Andrew's drumming was performed by Miles Teller himself to pre-recorded tracks.
That's the first thing I Googled I actually Googled 2 things, but I'll tell you the first thing I Googled later. But the second thing I found out was that Miles Teller, right? That's his name? He was the actual drummer in the movie. First of all, to sum it up, this is the movie where you see, what's his name in Spider-Man?
Andrew. Or in Spider-Man?
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons.
The guy in Spider-Man who basically is smoking a cigar. Spider-Man! You know, like that guy. He's basically in the movie where he's wearing a really tight black t-shirt and he's conducting the band. I feel like that's how most people know the movie that don't really pay attention to the film, because that's how I know the movie. You know, so we'll throw, especially because we have video for this section, we're going to put in what the movie looks like. But that's where I've heard this movie from a lot. And like I've only seen snippets of him in the black shirt being really close to the band. So when you recommended the movie, I was like, I only know so much about the film, but I know only that. So I just want to throw it out there for people that may be listening and don't know what it is, because it's such a recent film. 2014 is pretty recent. We kind of covered a lot of movies from like back then, you know, I'm trying to say lately. Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool that when you brought it up, I was like, am I going to like this shit because it's 2014? I'm a hater like that. Like anything recent, I'm very critical of. But boy, this shit was crazy. Anyway, go on, please.
Yeah, so about 40% of Teller's drumming was used in the official soundtrack of the movie, which is pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. He also did a lot of training for the movie in terms of doing a lot, because Miles Teller has had a passion for drumming since he was 15.
Amazing. Just like Paul McCartney at 15. Yeah. He was writing songs at 15 and stuff. My bad. I don't mean that, but it's just kind of that significant number you pointed out. Paul McCartney was writing songs at that age.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no. So Miles Teller, he was always playing the drums since 15. He loved it. And so, but for the movie, he practiced a lot more. He would practice, I think it was about 4 hours a day for 3 weeks straight. And he really put his all into this movie. And I could be completely wrong on this, but I think the footage that when he looks back in the movie of him as a little kid playing the drums, I think that's footage of Miles Teller himself as a kid playing the drums.
Really?
I could be completely wrong on that.
It's still pretty good footage of any little kid playing like drums, you know.
We'll throw that in the supplementary if anything,
Awesome.
but that was just another fun fact. Another trivia fact I got for you is that J.K. Simmons says the only line he improvised as Fletcher is when he calls Andrew a self-righteous little prick.
I love that. I love the scenes where he yelled at him, and I literally laughed out loud like like douchey, but it just, I'll get into it in a bit, but it just, I love shit like that. I love shit like that.
I thought that was a pretty good fact to bring up because I think that highlights how tight the script is.
Yeah.
Because for the fact that was the only line improvised, all those remarks that Fletcher makes and all those like jabs and cuts and Fletcher makes was all written.
Yeah.
And that I think that's a true testament to Damien Chazelle to write this script and to have all those things included.
For sure.
Another pretty interesting fact I have is that Andrew appears in every scene of the movie.
Wow.
He is never off screen. He is always there.
Andrew is the drummer.
Yes.
Wow. I didn't know that. And can I give a quick sum up just because I felt like you're giving me such crazy facts right now, and can we sum up the story for the viewers?
Of course.
Yeah, you sum it up because I feel like you're doing best. But give a quick sum up about what this movie is overall about.
Yeah, so sorry to dive so deep into it.
No, bro. Trust me, for me, that having just watched it literally today, and the reason I do that is because it's so fresh, and bro, I enjoyed this movie, and you're gonna see why. But give the viewers a synopsis, if you will.
The synopsis of the movie is that Miles Teller, Andrew Naiman, I believe is his last name. He's playing at
Safer.
I believe
Safer.
All right, I think it was Sheffield. But he's playing at one of the top music schools in the country. And he gets recruited into Terrence Fletcher's top class. And Terrence Fletcher is one of the best regarded conductors out there.
Yes.
And so Andrew Naiman, as a drummer, is trying to prove himself to be one of the bests to Terrence Fletcher. And that's the whole movie. It's just him just trying to get the not the appreciation, the acceptance.
I would also say appreciation because I think they coincide as well. And essentially, like, he's just trying to be like, I am good enough to be the best drummer here. And he wants to be the best drummer. He wants to be a legend. Yeah. He wants to be a legend in the movie. And it's basically like, I want to be the very next best. And I have to basically put up with this boot camp of a conductor, aka like music leader, if you want to put it in simpler terms. And he's a real like dictator of music. Yeah. And it's very intense.
The last fact I have for you is that this movie won 5 Oscars when it came out. Wow. It won Best Sound Mixing, Best Supporting Actor for J.K. Simmons, Best Film Editing, Best Picture, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And it won the Best Adapted Screenplay since it was a short film before it ever became a movie. Okay. But those are the facts I got for you. So now we can dive deep into the meat of the actual movie.
Oh, and I know. Let me just show this to the film real quick because I do wanna say one thing. And real quick, give me 2 seconds. I know you're watching, motherfuckers, so watch this shit real quick. If you're not, while I'm showing the laptop to the video camera, it will take 3 seconds. 1. Before we dive into the real meat of everything, before I talk about this film, that probably didn't even show up the camera like I wanted to. I want to dedicate, and I know I did this last episode, but this is some real shit. I want to dedicate this segment to my friend Lewis, who passed. Oh, and okay. I used to play trombone with back in high school, you know? So I want to take like maybe like a moment of silence for my friend Lewis. Okay. So... Okay. And cause man, watching this shit was like when I remember I told you before I got here, I was like, this shit brought back memories to me, you know? And even in my fucking voice, shit is getting sentimental. But being like coming back to reality, the reason I bring it up is because I played in a band, an orchestra in high school, you know, and I played trombone with my friends Louis and Jorge and Christian, who I don't know as much as both of them because I went to middle school with both Jorge and Louis, but it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And before we get a little more into that, I appreciate you taking that moment of silence. I know you would, of course. But yeah, man, that motherfucker was cool as shit. So I hope he's looking either down, up, sideways, whatever. I'll fuck with you. Look. Yeah. So let's get into the grid of the movie.
Let's get into the grid of the movie.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I'll start off with saying that this movie, to me, the first time I saw it, it blew me out of the water. Oh, man. I thought I have some reviews I'll bring up later.
Oh, please do, because those are the funnest.
Right?
Throw back to Star Wars. Yeah, man.
But to me, this movie just really threw me aback.
Yeah.
I think I saw this movie after I saw La La Land.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And I could see a lot of Damien Chazelle's work in the sort of his style of filmmaking be translated from these two films.
Got you.
And one of the most notable moments I could think of is that in La La Land, there are these quick whips that happen at the camera. And
I'm sure that video has been shared on Instagram a lot.
Where Damien Chazelle tapping the camera guy to like push the camera left and right. He uses those quick whips in Whiplash.
Of course, with the orchestra and stuff like that. Yeah. And I want to shout out to Daredevil real quick because I'm watching Daredevil right now. This is an A.M.C. Our movie comic show. Bro, the scene where motherfucking Daredevil is fighting on the hallway staircase and he's going downstairs and the cameraman is following him. Oh my God. I was watching it with Beatrice and I would not shut the fuck up. I'd be like, do you see how great this is? The cameraman should have won 10 awards. And I was just going off about how much the cameraman should have got appreciation, which of course they do. So Jesus.
One shots are always amazing.
Incredible. And you only get one chance until you got to do it again. You know what I'm trying to say? So you get multiple chances, but it's that one.
There's a lot of film magic that happens to it. I won't lie. I'm sure for those Daredevil scenes, they definitely cheated.
No doubt. No fucking doubt.
But
go on.
But anyways.
I like how you slipped that in there, bro. If you're listening, this motherfucker has been saying anyways. And I've been laughing every single time because I'm wearing freaking earphones that are connected to this mouse. so I hear it. But if you don't, this motherfucker is going mad. What's it? On me, man. So, but first of all, if we could throw it out there, I'm Mexican American, man. And what are you, Javi?
I'm Dominican Colombian.
I thought you were Asian. And that's who we are. Anyway, before we get into more of it, I got the way I wrote my notes for this movie is kind of like the Beatles, and the reason I'm referring to the Beatles a lot because that shit was awesome, and I feel like the more we go into our podcast, I think the more I'm learning how to do this shit better and better, right?
Okay.
And so I took notes as I saw the movie today for the first time, right?
All right.
So this movie is about music, and more so orchestral music. I absolutely love orchestral music, and I've always said this. First of all, one of the most original forms of music is Gregorian chant, which is basically how they wrote music back then, like back then, like literally singing in caves, like like Halo shit, like you know, like I won't say like the more Gregorian chant. They kind of created the format for how we write music today. So when you read a Gregorian chant written music, it's little dots on paper, kind of like sheet music. And the higher up the dots are, the higher the note is. And the lower the dots are, the lower the note is. And now we have G clef and bass clef. So that's how we read music today. And time measurement, all that stuff, tempo and all that stuff, right?
Not my tempo.
Exactly. Little fucking, what's it called? Callback?
Inside joke.
a little bit of both. And music has always been very important to me because the history of it is beautiful. But I always think that no matter what music you listen to today, whether it be rock, hip hop, jazz, reggae, salsa, cumbia, I mean, it'll go on, right? It all kind of comes together from classical music, you know? And the the original instrument, which is the voice. Before there's instruments, I mean, there was always an instrument. The voice is an instrument.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, you know? Javi sings, so he knows that shit. He's a great singer. But I wanted to say this before all my notes. It's an old joke. It's a very old joke. A man in New York City, he's walking around New York City, and he goes into a taxi cab, and he says, hey, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the taxi driver looks back at him, and he says, practice, practice, practice.
Wow.
For all you band geeks out there, I know you laughed. And for all people that didn't laugh, that's your fault. Carnegie Hall is one of the most prestigious places anyone can play music ever. And what he means is basically to get there, you gotta practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
And I think essentially what this movie is Terrence Fletcher, that's his name, right?
Uh-huh.
Saying, motherfucker, not only do you need to practice practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If that relates, because it does.
Definitely in Fletcher's perspective, for sure.
And one thing I want to throw out there, which sucks ass for me, is that this is not a true story. Right? It's based off a lot of like stories of other people, but this story in itself isn't completely true. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just telling you. I don't know if you're but it's not. It's because the first thing I looked up, I was like, is this movie true? And it was like, unfortunately, this shit is not true. And I was like, no. But it's a lot of influence from other music, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an interview where Damon Chazelle brought up of like, for him, the inspiration this movie came up from his own experience of going to band practice, and how he had an instructor that was really awful that like to this day he still has nightmares about sometimes.
Yeah.
And that was the inspiration of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great moment when Andrew is having, I was about to call him Miles.
It's hard not to like differentiate.
But when Andrew is having that dinner,
Andrew the drummer.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When he's having that dinner with his family, and that his one cousin or something points out, but isn't music like subjective or something? Yeah. And in this world, it very much is not.
Only in this world. And
yeah. And that in this world, music is very much so to that tempo and to that beat and to that rhythm. And if you don't have it that way, it's wrong. And
to specify a little more, the scene is what's his name again? The
Andrew.
Drummer. And so Andrew, the drummer within the orchestra that Fletcher is leading, right? He's trying to talk about his success in the band, right? He got to be the core drummer for the orchestra, right?
Uh-huh.
And he's kind of being overlooked by, is it his brothers or cousins?
I think they're his cousins.
So his cousins are football players, right? And and the family, the older generation of the family is saying like, "Oh, look at the football players; they're doing so good, they're thriving." And then Andrew is like, "But I'm finally like advancing in my music career," and they're like, "That's cool and all, but they're playing football." And then Andrew's like, "Yeah, but they're only playing third division, which is like a mediocre level of football in terms of first division, you know." And I kind of wanted to share a little bit of my personal experience with orchestra, like this little slight, because so in high school, this is the only time I get to talk about it really. I played football and I played trombone in high school. You know?
Okay.
So when I started playing in the orchestra, I mean, we both went to the same high school. You know? Should we shout it out?
LIC high school.
LIC motherfucking high school, bitch. So we both went there. It wasn't the best school in the world, but I had fun. How you had it? You had fun? So I applied to that school for the orchestra experience, right?
Okay.
And I just happened to play football and cross. But when I got to LIC, I sat down and I got to my music class and I was so excited. Bro, I was like, let's fucking go. I'm going to play some motherfucking orchestra music. I'm going to be in the orchestra. My friend Lewis that I mentioned before, he played in the orchestra in our middle school, the one I went to with him. He played trombone and he would say things like, we played Bohemian Rhapsody and we played Jaws and Star Wars in orchestra that he would play in, like a whole organized orchestra with I think the teacher was named Mr. Lehman, right? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, Lewis? And me and him were like close friends for life. Like he was a motherfucker I knew for like a long time, He was a good friend, but he had closer friends than me. But we would play Mario Party at his house, like and shit like that. So I know that's relevant to your viewers, but I do know for the motherfuckers that know me personally, and I'm talking about Jorge, you've been there. Anyway, So when I got to LIC, we had a teacher named Mr. B, who was a big name. He was also bald, which is kind of funny. He looked like Terrence Fletcher, but he kind of also navigated himself like Terrence Fletcher. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that when I was in high school, the music teacher I had, he was more focused on his advanced band than the beginner band. So in that class of beginner band that I had hopes of learning music, we did it. He kind of just bragged about how good he was of a teacher. He was like, look what I could do with the piano. And he would show us. And then he would feel like, so play this. And we were like, what the fuck? You didn't teach us how to play anything, you know? And the reason I want to tell the story is because I have the year after, because this guy kind of gave up and just started showing us movies. The only thing I learned from this bitch is leitmotif. Do you know what a leitmotif is?
No.
So a leitmotif is basically when you watch Jaws, right? Because if you haven't watched Jaws, watch that shit. When you see that the shark comes into the scene, what happens?
Dun dun.
Dun 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 dun.
Dun dun.
Dun! When Darth Vader comes to the screen, what happens?
Oh.
Dun dun dun.
Okay.
Dun 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 dun. When Indiana Jones comes to the scene, what happens? I forget the music myself.
Dun, 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 dun,
Dun,
dun,
dun,
dun,
dun, dun, dun, dun. You know, dun, 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 you know. So that's what a leitmotif is. When a character enters a scene and there's a music associated with the character, that's what a leitmotif is.
Okay.
That's all I learned from that motherfucker, which is a great, great thing to learn. And I literally just remembered it now because my mind is being retraced back so many things. It's like therapy. But he stopped being the teacher, you know? And I had a teacher who I will credit today. Her name is Miss Cruz. And she walks into the orchestra classroom. And we're all assigned instruments. The way that the previous teacher assigned me an instrument, he was like, me. He was like, stand up. I stood up. He's like, put your arms out. And I did. He was like, trombone. I was like, oh. Miss Cruz came to teach a class. And she said, honey, play a B flat. I looked at her and I was like, what? She was like, play a B flat. I was like, I never learned what that is. She was like, you poor baby. You know? To sum up an entire high school experience, not only did she teach this organized class how to play music, you know, she taught us how to cooperate as an orchestra, work as a team. We got to play in front of our school, you know, which wasn't the best performances, but we got better and better. She organized an after-school program to clean up the instruments that were there because they were gross, you know. Okay. I played trombones, and one of the scenes of Whiplash, you see the trombone player spit, and there's spit coming out the valves. That's what I used to do. I used to spit the spit out my valves on the floor and then lube up my slide so I could play trombone. I learned how to play La Bamba, dun, 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 you know. And I also practiced the Futurama theme song in the beginning. I learned my B-flat scales, my G scales, my D scales, everything. And she also started a piano after-school club afterwards. I mentioned that I played high school and football. Football in high school. Whoops. Ooh. I waved the alcohol bottle. One of the best moments I've ever had in my life is that I wasn't playing in a homecoming game. I was kind of just wearing the uniform to like do some stupid high school football shit. So I was wearing my football pads. But I got to play the Star Spangled Banner in my football pads.
Okay.
So that was one of the coolest moments ever in my life. I was wearing my football outfit.
You really are an American.
America. And one of the most beautiful things ever that I wish I got to experience, but I didn't. And she said she would always do this. After you graduated, she was able to take the orchestra that she was building up from like literally from my grade, and they performed in the City Field for the Mets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. LIC High School, Miss Cruz.
Nice.
So she revolutionized how a whole group of kids that were doing nothing in a classroom with a teacher that would neglect them to actually teaching them something with care, love, and way different from Terrence Fletcher. But I wanted to bring that up because at the same time of everything, I was with my friend Louis and Jorge and my friend Christian. We were all trombonists. We were all Mexican. And by one of our teachers there, I don't know if you know who he is. His name is Mr. Sid Rovovich. Mr. Sid. He taught the other orchestra. He called us the Brasters.
The Brasters.
Because the trombone is a brass instrument.
Yeah.
So that's why he calls us the Brasters. Maybe a little bit because we were Mexican, but that's a different story for them. I know it's a tangent. I know it's a different tangent. But watching this movie And the reason I want to take a moment of silence and dedicate it is because this had a big impact on me because I knew what it is to be a part of an orchestra. Not that sophisticated, but just in the sense of what I take from it is that when you watch a movie and you cry, you don't cry because of the scene. You may cry because of the acting, but what makes you really cry is the violence.
Yeah.
When you're scared of a movie and you're scared of a scene, what are you scared of? Ding! Yeah. The instruments. And I think ultimately,
I'm sure you probably got some people right there.
Yeah. Oh shit. And I'm gonna explain the scene later on, but I really wanted to share that shit because I'm gonna get some more points, and Jesus Christ, I want to really go on forever with this movie because it's really one of those things where I'm grateful we talk about entertainment. Well, sometimes I wish we could have our whole audience watch the entertainment before we talk about it. Because anyway, so the character Andrew, he gets chosen as core drummer for the very advanced class that is Tanner Fletcher's class of an orchestra. Yeah. And it's like boot camp. It's kind of like Hitler's version of orchestra.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say that like from the opening scene alone, it really just builds the tone for the movie. Mm-hmm. From the opening scene alone, you see Andrew just playing the drums and Fletcher comes in and he's like, "Why'd you stop playing?" And you're like, "Oh shit." Yeah. Ooh. And Andrew starts playing again and he's like,
"Did I tell you to stop playing?"
Yeah.
And he's like, he keeps playing and he starts talking and he stops and he's like, "But did I tell you to stop playing?" You know, right? Or some shit like that.
Yeah. He's like, "Did I tell you to start playing?" Your reaction to me asking you, "Why did you stop playing?" was to act up as a wind-up monkey and to play again. Yeah. And it's so intense. The anxiety throughout this movie is so high up because Fletcher, like how you keep pointing out to, is like this sort of drill sergeant. Yeah. And he just really goes in. Yeah. He does not hold back whatsoever.
He's a very, very, very vulgar and fucking just crazy motherfucker. Like drill, like you said, drill sergeant of a orchestra conductor. But what he ultimately wants is to make the best orchestra he can make, but that doesn't involve him. That involves everybody else believing that they could do it within themselves. He just has
it's not even that he wants the best orchestra. Mm-hmm. He wants sort of the acknowledgement even to himself that he founded the next great. Yeah. He wants that soul recognition that
or more so pushed it, because I think that's where we get a little different minded, because I think he just wants to push these musicians to be the best version of themselves, which he says later on to the movie.
No, he does.
Yeah. So,
no, I agree.
Okay, nice. Cool.
No, yeah, I mean, he says that quite literally, where he's like, "I want to push people past their limits." Exactly. But he also says he also says with that he doesn't care about orchestrating. Any asshole can wave his hand.
Can wave a hand in front of a band.
Yeah, is what he says. To him, what's more important is discovering the next great. Oh yeah. And I think it was so interesting and so amazing, the moments that come up in this movie of like, is Andrew gonna become one of the greats or not?
Yeah. And at first they give you a little hint of like, oh, this is gonna be a feel-good movie of him being an extraordinary student and he's so good and he gives him a chance, but then he easily gets replaced by his like old mediocre band member, which is and basically what I'm trying to say is that the guy from the intermediate band goes to the advanced band and he gets a chance to perform not Whiplash. Was it Whiplash?
They do play that song. They also play Caravan. Yes. is a big song that they play.
And the first song they're practicing is Whiplash, and the Andrew guy performs it beautifully. And so the Andrew guy gets so like hot-headed. He's like, "Oh, I'm nice. I'm hot shit. I'm reaching up to Fletcher, the conductor's expectations." And then Fletcher is like, "You know what? I'm gonna bring in your old band member, and I'm gonna see how good he is, just to make sure that we get the best version of a drummer we can into the band." And then Connolly, right? That's his name.
Connolly, yeah.
Connolly, one of Andrew's former intermediate band members, plays the drums better than him at that moment, quote unquote. And
allegedly,
and this drives Andrew fucking wild. Oh my God. Like, he says, "This guy plays drums better than me. Fuck that. I'm gonna go off." And he goes off and he practices by himself to the point where he's bleeding from his hands playing drums. Yeah. And that's the one thing that I get to the movie where I just end up thinking to the point where I didn't like the scenes where he was dipping his bloody hands in ice.
Oh.
So I very much look at Andrew as a mediocre actor.
So Miles Teller?
Yes. Oh no. Oh, whoever is the actual actor playing the student.
Yeah, Miles Teller.
Oh, that's his name, Miles Teller?
Yes.
So my bad, I hit the mic. I didn't think he was that great of an actor. I thought everybody was a mediocre actor, but except the extras who were just being extras, right?
Okay.
But I'm not trying to say they were terrible actors. I mean, they were just being kind of like regular people, right? But Andrew, because he has so much screen time, I felt he was just the all-looking person doing his thing, you know? I felt Terrence Fletcher, played by
J.K. Simmons,
carried the whole movie, you know? And the reason I say that is because it's his essence and his vulgarity and his power that brings out what the movie's supposed to be, you know? And the reason I say I didn't like when he put his bloody hand in the ice bin, basically he drummed so hard his hands were bleeding. What I liked instead is that when he was playing Caravan, the second song they were practicing, and the conductor was like, Terrence Fletcher, he said, faster, drum faster. And when he was drumming, there was a front shot of him drumming, and he was going so fast. Then the camera circled around him, and then you could see the blood on the panel of the drum, and then on the cymbals. And I thought that was in better taste. When I saw him putting his hands in ice, I thought they were trying to be the Rocky of music. Like dun 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 dun, because he was practicing so hard. I was like, we get it. Like, that's not the only. When I play trombone, my lips are bigger because of trombone. When I left practice, my lips would tingle. They would go. If you played a brass instrument and you blew into a mouthpiece, you understand that your lips literally feel like electricity when you leave. They don't stop tingling till 2 hours later.
Yeah, like don't like jazz like musicians have like bigger cheeks for that reason.
Trumpet players in particular, like Louis Armstrong, when you see him play, you'll see his cheeks puff up much higher. But with trombone players and like French horn and all this stuff, they kind of make this, and I'll do it further from mic. That's how you play trombone. You play it by doing with your lips.
Okay.
And that's why when you're playing into a mouthpiece, when you stop playing, your lips still quiver. But when you're playing trumpet, it's more like you gotta puff up your cheeks because it's such a small mouthpiece, you know?
Okay.
And then what I like that they shot a lot about the movie is the specifics of how to play an instrument. When clarinets were using their wooden reeds to insert into the clarinet, they were wetting them at first because they need to be soaking wet to be able to carry that wind through the clarinet and everything.
I mean, for you to point that out, I mean, Damien Chazelle, again, he sort of wrote this movie off of his own experience.
That's awesome.
You
could tell he had experience.
Yeah, like he is a avid fan of jazz music, and La La Land is also a clear example of that, because if anyone who's seen that movie is basically how white people save jazz.
100%. And jazz in America today is the least popular genre in America.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
Y'all motherfuckers are crazy. Sorry about that.
I didn't know that until you said it, but I believe it.
And I wanted to bring up one thing. Jesus Christ. There's a guy I saw earlier yesterday. His name is Philip Franklin Lee.
Okay.
He's a cook, so he's not a musician.
Okay.
He's responsible for a place called Pasta Bar in Austin, and I think in Los Angeles. He makes food. People like Leonardo DiCaprio have eaten in his restaurant. He's very famous. But he was talking about his experience on the William Montgomery Show, which is a show on YouTube, right? And he was saying that they asked him a question like, what do you think about chefs like Chef Ramsay and stuff? Gordon Ramsay.
Oh.
You know, like, what are you, a fucking sandwich or some shit like that? But, you know? And he said, nowadays, you can't do that anymore. You can't be like that to other student chefs. Why do you think you can't do that no more to other student chefs?
Because it just would probably get socially accepted as wrong.
Well, not only that, it's illegal. It's actually illegal. And what he's saying is that when he grew up in the cooking industry, and a lot of people that I know that are in the cooking industry have grown up with chefs that are like tormenting them. And not only like verbally, but just crazy like. And I've read Anthony Bourdain's book, which is not the only chef in the world, but he talks about those situations too. and how amazing they are. And even if you watch a little bit of Ratatouille, which I know is a way different, I definitely recommend Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, which is one of my favorite book in the world.
Okay.
But even with Ratatouille, when you see the environment of a kitchen, you know, there's real grit to it because motherfuckers in the kitchen are really up all night. You know, they say, "What do you do on Valentine's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all that stuff? You go to dinner, right? Who's working?
The people there
In the kitchen, right? So they don't have those days off. They work, you know? And I think that was real crucial. And he said, now that those things are so sensitive to people, that he said it's a kind of a shame that the people coming up, they don't get to experience that no more. Because what they're trying to do is make you the best version of you can be. What does that remind you of? Terrence Fletcher.
Yeah.
You know? And my music teacher, and I'm not the best version I could be musically, like I just did what I did in high school, but I do think in the military and the music and in the kitchen, that extra grit that you can apply to a student really does bring out the best in you. Did it not with this Andrew guy ultimately at the end?
I mean, I think what's really interesting about this movie,
we don't want to skip over, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about this movie as a whole is because I think it sort of brings up an argument, the argument of nature versus nurture.
For sure.
Because Fletcher's big argument to why he's such an awful person and why he's so hard as an instructor is because he thinks that saying the words good job are the most harmful
terrible
things you could ever say to someone.
Yes, sir.
Because it can prevent someone from becoming greater than what they are.
Yeah.
That is his belief. And so that is why he pushes everyone to the extent that he does.
Yeah, so hard.
And it really speaks to that nature versus nurture because I think it does bring the question of that, well, if you were going to be great or if you are great, you would be anyways.
Yeah.
And so there's that nature versus nurture of like, is Andrew Neiman a great drummer because he's a great drummer by nature? Or it's because of Fletcher pushing him the way he did by nurture. And I think what's really interesting about the movie is that it doesn't answer that question. It leaves it open-ended. Even with that final shot where it shows Fletcher, just his eyes.
Smiling.
Arguably he's smiling, but we don't know because we don't see it.
And I see his cheeks elevated, but you're right. We don't know.
No, his cheeks are elevated, but I think that's done on purpose.
Yeah.
It's done very purposely where it leaves it open-ended of that. Is Fletcher smiling and is he proud of Andrew? Or is he just happy that he found his own sort of selfish gain of finally, I found my bird? Because that's something he speaks of, Larry Bird, a lot in the movie, that he wants to find his own version of that. And so it really raises that question of that, is Fletcher doing this for himself or is he doing it for the sake of music? Yeah. And it just coincides with that nature versus nurture, I think. There's even that great moment at the end with Andrew's dad as he's peeking through. Yeah. And he's just kind of gone down to shock.
And what he's peeking through, what Andrew's dad is looking at is basically Terrence Fletcher, to kind of trace back a little. Before one of their final like practices, what did Terrence Fletcher play for the band? He played a tape of one of his old students called Sean Casey. So before Andrew got into this orchestra, I mean, Terrence Fletcher has been teaching a bunch of other students, right?
Yeah.
And one in particular was called Sean Casey. And apparently the Sean Casey student died that morning, right? And he said, hey, he died in a car accident this morning, and he played his tape, and he was in third chair in the Lincoln Center Orchestra, and he made it to first chair. I was first chair in my high school orchestra.
Oh, okay.
Basically, he said that his old student, Sean Casey, had died in a car accident, and that he had a tremendous profile of being one of the best trumpet players, or one of the most, what's the word? Like he had so much fire in him. Terrence Fletcher saw that this trumpet player had so much fire in him that he brought him to his band, pushed him. He graduated, became third chair in the orchestra, then became first chair, and then died in a car accident. Later on, Andrew his current student, current drummer, he wanted the part so bad to a point he was on his way to a performance, so focused and driven to not be replaced by his counterpart that he was driving his car speeding and got hit by a truck. Now, one thing I want to mention about that scene is that I was biting my nails right before he hit the truck. Like, I was literally biting my nails, and I was like, is that because of the music, or because I was like, I want him to get there to not miss his chance to be part of this band? Because Terrence Fletcher said, if you don't make it on time, you're cut from the band, you're done, you know? And so later on, this guy gets hit by a car, and he still shows up, bloody in the face, bloody in the hand, and tries to play his part in the band. And Terrence Fletcher allows him to play, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. You know? That he sees his drummer bloodied, and he's like, well, if he's going to play, he's going to play, you know? And that's when I think, how far has he taken it, you know? After that, a lawyer comes up to Andrew and says, has this guy emotionally taken a toll on you? Because one of his old students has died from suicide. His old student was Sean Casey, you know? Yeah. When I was watching that movie, hand to whatever you believe in, I knew that he was lying about Sean Casey dying in a car accident. Okay. And the reason I say that is because I think about Japanese students committing suicide in the suicide forest of Japan. How they're so pressured to be academically inclined that when they don't succeed to the expectations of their, you know, parents and stuff, they commit suicide in that forest. And that just gave me like fucking flashbacks that I don't have of that. And I'm not just saying that to be like, yeah, I knew it. But a lot of the moves he made, when he brought in the Okani guy, I knew that was to push Andrew. Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And
a big point too is that I'm sure Fletcher stole the folder or hid the folder,
something like that, and we don't know, but it could be very much the truth. And when he performed, when he brought him up on stage after getting fired, when Fletcher got fired from the school because Andrew eventually said, you know what, he did cause me emotional damage, all because the lawyer told him to say that. He was like, just tell me what to say, you know? Yeah. He eventually Andrew's working at a sandwich shop, and he finds Fletcher in a jazz club, you know, and he says he goes to go see Fletcher, who was fired from the school and now performing in a club, and Fletcher sees Andrew and he says, "Hey, come perform with me with some big time New York musicians," and he invites Andrew, and he's getting hype again. He's like, "I'm gonna play some drums," and right before the show starts, Fletcher goes up to Andrew and says, I know that it was you that ratted me out. And he doesn't give him the right music to play and embarrasses him in front of everybody.
Doesn't your heart just kind of drop when that happens?
I knew that shit too, bro. Like I knew that he was going to do that shit to him, man.
Regardless of that.
But you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Because like I expected it too. Yeah. Even when Andrew lied to him of like, oh, you got fired? Yeah. What a piece of shit, you know? Because Andrew acted like he didn't snitch on Fletcher. Yeah. And you feel it. You're like, no, like you can just feel that the lies are there, and you know that the truth is right there.
So blatant.
And so when Fletcher says to him, he's like, you think I'm a fucking idiot? Yeah, man. You're like, oh my God. Yeah. It hits you and you're like, fuck.
And that's why I didn't expect when motherfucker and Andrew goes off on the drums and starts literally conducting the orchestra himself. He starts to lead his orchestra with his drumming in the final part of the movie. He starts drumming and Fletcher's like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to cue you guys. And, and Fletcher says, not Fletcher, Andrew says, it's my time. I'm going to be fucking... And I think ultimately what this movie is both of them lost, you know?
Okay, that's a really interesting take. Right? They both lost.
They both lost and are lost, you know? But both are so engulfed with music, you know, and competitiveness, and they both want to be the best. And I guess to be the best, you got to be crazy. One of the key things that they said at the dinner, when Andrew was at the dinner with his parents, he says, "Do you just want to be a 34-year-old heroin addict dying on the corner of a street like all musicians?" And that reminds me of Jimi Hendrix, who literally died outside of a club overdosing, and Mac Miller even, who died recently, who I really much loved. And I mean, what a fucking movie, you know?
It really points or pinpoints that question of like, how worth it is success? How worth it? How much are you willing to put in to be successful? Yeah. And even with the breakup scene, the fact that Andrew's just kind of like,
he sacrificed his girlfriend to make more time for his music.
And he says it to her straight up.
Like, exactly.
He says that directly to her. He's like, I need to be the best, and you being in my life will prevent that.
Yeah. And I thought that was actually a pretty good move. Because I think
damn.
Pew, pew.
I thought that was so fucked up. I was like, damn.
I don't think it was. I think distractions are very real, and I just think that he was smart to do that. He was very mature to do that. I don't think that was a wrong. It seemed wrong, but I think the wronger part was to go so far into risking his mental health, his life, his health. I mean,
he still called her though.
He called her because he missed his chance back then when he was doing it, and so then he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna get this one last chance of redemption." And it's like, why are you calling her though? Because now you want to seem like a big shot that you thought you were going to be, you know? It's like, if he knew he was going to be this big shot forever, he would have, I mean, I guess I'm just being conflicted in my own head, right? But why didn't he call her while he was working in a sandwich shop?
Because he definitely wasn't at his best. Definitely the way that I see it is that he called her because he was finally feeling a little bit better about himself. And I think he finally came to a realization for himself where he was like, I can do music and still have my own life.
But why did he think he could do music?
Because Fletcher definitely sort of invited him to join the orchestra. And that gave him that sliver of hope of like, oh, I can still do music, but that doesn't mean I had to give up my life.
But didn't Fletcher invite him to do music before?
I mean, technically with the class and stuff, but
I mean, officially with the class, because to get into that class, everybody had to be the best, to be chosen by him.
But he's not in the school anymore. And I think that's the big difference, because even with the other drummer, Tanner, I believe his name, he switched to pre-med or something like that.
Yeah, they gave up.
And so, and I think that's what brings up the nature versus nurture question again, of that, was Andrew always destined to be one of the greats?
Or was he desperate for Fletcher's approval?
Exactly.
Yeah, man. And I think ultimately, he was desperate for his approval. I don't think he cared about being the greatest. I think in order for him to be the greatest, he had to get past Fletcher's approval, which Fletcher probably would never give him, because nobody could be the greatest in terms of Fletcher's opinion, because Fletcher is the greatest.
That's pretty good.
I think that's what it is. I think I correct the quote. Not to be like that, but I think, and that just came to my mind, I think it's a sad cycle that they both are within, because
I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but just kind of like how we feed off each other and things like that, whatever the case is. Like both of these characters, Andrew and Fletcher, feed off of each other. Yeah. Andrew, who always wants to be the best, and Fletcher, who's looking for the best.
Holy shit.
They just feed off of each other.
That's fucking insane. That sounds biblical even. Right? Like, that sounds biblical to the point where it's like their destiny is cursed to be that they'll never reach their potential, because the other is always outdoing them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I did write one thing that, last time I said that, well, I'll say whatever I say. What I wrote about the end of the movie, I said, very interesting segue into what music is showing. Speaking of, but fuck that. Big time means big time. Big work, big emotions, no pussies within. Those are the audience. And I think that's what it is ultimately. That when you see a motherfucker like Jimi Hendrix on stage, putting in work in his guitar, changing the national anthem as we know it, when you see the Beatles put out Sgt. Pepper and be like, hey, I'm changing shit. When you see Jay-Z come out of nowhere and just kill the whole rapping game, when you see anybody make music, Kurt Cobain come out and just, destroy it with his lyrical amazingness and guitar playing. And I mean, there's so much artists that I can mention,
Yeah.
And even like Red Hot Chili Peppers, who weren't supposed to be as big as they were, that I'm about to start reading about them. What I'm trying to say is that the greatest are the greatest because they go through the greatest amount of things, And it may not be all artists, but I believe that there's a reason why a lot of artists do heroin, I believe that's why a lot of artists are alcoholics and drug users. And
there's a lot that comes with that sort of success.
Yeah, shit is heavy.
And what's a really interesting point in the movie in itself is that this idea of how Larry Bird became Bird.
Yeah.
And that he became Bird because this other guy threw a cymbal at his head.
Is it Buddy Richard or is it Larry Bird? Because Larry Bird's a basketball player.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
God.
I've been trying to look it up whether you've been saying this or that, but I'm pretty sure it's Buddy Richard.
Well, Buddy Rich
Is the guy Andrew was listening to in the beginning.
Buddy
right?
Rich is definitely one of the artists that
Buddy
he listens
Rich,
to.
I'm sorry, yeah.
But Bird, I know, is one of an artist. I could just be getting the Larry.
The Larry,
part wrong.
I think the Larry you're confusing with the basketball player, which my bad, I didn't say it. I was like, is it or is it not?
But Bird, as an artist,
Yes.
had a symbol thrown in his head, and that's how he became Bird.
And in the scene where Terrence Fletcher throws a chair at Andrew's head,
is very metaphorical of that.
So amazing.
And so definitely, which just speaks to the fact that Fletcher is just looking for his next bird. He doesn't care how he gets it. He just wants to discover the next great.
He says, I was there to push people beyond what's expected of them, which you said. He said it was absolutely necessary. And that's how you get the next Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, bro. Jesus Christ, this movie was so fucking crazy.
It's intense. It's a lot of anxiety, and it really brings up the question of that. How far is too far as an instructor, especially in something as interesting as the arts?
Yeah. And for me, I just think that the best are crazy, and the craziest can withstand the toughest things. And I think, and that's just my opinion, because I don't think it's correct, but I think the best will look at Fletcher's aggressiveness and they'll take it like, that ain't shit to me because I want to be the best.
Yeah.
And you got to be crazy to want that. And that's why I didn't think Fletcher was going too far at all. I think I think more people should be like Fletcher. And I think that because more people aren't being like Fletcher, we're losing the potential of what society comes out to, in my opinion, in terms of music, cooking, everything. And I know that may lead to like really bad things for people, but if that ain't what you want to be, give up. Because the best rely on you to give up so they can be the best, you know?
I don't know if I have an outright opinion of like what I think is the best thing, to be perfectly honest. I just like looking at the conversation more than anything.
That's dope too. Yeah.
Of like, is this right or is this wrong?
Yeah.
Because again, a whole student was brought to death.
Yeah. He committed suicide. That's worse than death. That's Terrence Fletcher's, a part of Terrence Fletcher's fault is his conscience.
Yeah. And so I just think that's a really interesting topic of like, again, how far is too far?
True. But would you say that him going into that class and staying in that class, was that his fault to stay there? Could he have just walked away?
It's true. Yeah. That's another thing too.
Because in one of the scenes, Fletcher slaps Andrew 3 times in the face.
I have a fun fact about that. Originally,
he actually slapped him?
He actually slapped him because they did a couple takes where they did mimic slaps, but then
didn't come out well.
But both Miles and J.K. Simmons agreed to do a take where they did actual slaps, and that's a take that stays in the movie.
I think that's important, and I think I'm just crazy because if I film the movie, I think real slaps are better than non-real slaps. I know that's like controversial today, but hey, man, you want to be the best, you gotta do the best, you know, and the best are crazy, you know. So I just think that if you're not game, get out. You know, if what is it? If too hot for the kitchen, get out the kitchen.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
No,
too hot for the kitchen.
What is the fucking saying? God damn. I gotta Google that before I fucking stop. Fuck. Wait, hold on, just chat, Javi. Let me just say.
Gets too hot in the kitchen with too many cooks or something like that.
Sauteed peppers. Oh, wait. If you can't stay in the heat, get out the kitchen. There we go.
We got there.
Jesus Christ. First of all, I just want to say I'm extremely grateful that you recommended that movie, man, because I mean, literally, like I'm nowhere near as great as talented as these fictional characters and whatever they're based off, Buddy Rich and all these people. I'm not. But I am musically inclined, and when I was watching that movie, man, I just remembered and the main thing that comes to me that I actually told Beatrice before I saw the movie, I was like, you know, man, when you play in an orchestra, it's selfless because nobody cares about one single person in the orchestra. You know, you watch a band or something, like it's a sound coming together, but you look at the best guitarist, the singer, but orchestras comprised of like 20 plus people, man.
Yeah.
And percussions are often looked at as, you know, anybody could do percussions, you know, like, you know, triangle, xylophone, it's whatever. It's just tapping shit. But drums are really complicated, and I've grown to appreciate drumming because of this movie. And I've always looked at it as that when you play in an orchestra, it don't matter one single person. It's about the whole coming together of everything. And I realized that, playing in music when I left, nobody cared. Nobody cared. But when you're within there, you're making music to the world as a collective. You know, and when you watch a movie like Jaws, you don't care about the orchestra members. You don't care about John Williams.
No,
you just care about dun 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 dun. Like that's only if you care to look into whose name is who conducted that, created that. You feel me? So, goddamn.
Well, to end all this, I got some reviews for you for
Please
the movie.
give me them.
Pulled these out of Letterboxd. They're pretty good.
Okay.
So, first one I got from you is from featuring Dante from the DMC series.
Dante.
That's their username.
I guess we gotta look up the DMC series.
And they say, I had a dream that J.K. Simmons yelled at me and I woke up crying. 5 stars.
Honestly, same. Okay. That motherfucker was harsh, man. I mean, can we just say this because we started the episode with this? I mean, he did use the FAGGOT word a lot, and if you can spell, you know what I'm talking about. And I think that comes down to the core of our initial conversation. I was the argument. So sorry. Initial conversation.
Debate.
Sophisticated argument. And it comes down to basically, I mean, this movie has that word a lot, and that word is very controversial. Not as controversial as the N word, I would say, for sure. But ultimately, like, are we gonna get rid of this movie because of it? I don't think so.
No.
Nah, right? And I think at the core of everything, when you see what entertainment stems from and what people say, I mean, Quentin Tarantino, did he not use the N-word in his movies?
Oh, all the time.
All the time, And I just want to point that out because I think it's important. I mean, are we going to get rid of every Quentin Tarantino movie? Because I know you bitches love Pulp Fiction. I know you do. And so when we look at this beautiful movie that is Whiplash, he uses, that F word or whatever you guys want to say. Because I know Spotify's censoring shit nowadays. And I think it's important to really conserve media entertainment, because if it uses the words, just like books written by African Americans, using the N-word and stuff like that, I think it's important to say that, hey, there's a reason they're using it, because it's representing either a fictitious story or a real story, because these words are real. And just like getting rid of statues, you're deleting history.
Yeah.
If you don't have any more statues of Confederates or like Nazis, not to praise them, but in museums, guess what? It might just happen again, and new statues will be built of them when they take over. I know it's an absurd thing to say, but sometimes those statues are there to teach history, so it won't happen again.
Fair enough.
That's just a big thing I want to say. So
fair enough.
I mean, I sneaked that in there, but I did, motherfucker. so that was a good fucking review by that motherfucker, though, because I don't ever want to meet. You know what? If I met Terrence Fletcher, I wouldn't be scared of him.
Really?
I'm no bitch.
I would love to see you make him cry.
I've never been that person where it comes to, I'm not saying like I'm the toughest man alive, but like when I'm given an objective, and if you're the person teaching me the objective, I'm going to take it as like, well, you're just trying to make me better, slap me on be tight, but get sticks and stones, man. Like, if you're screaming at me.
They throw a chair at you. How you going to feel?
I don't give a fuck. You're not hitting me with the chair.
Come on.
Nah, man, come on. I swear.
He didn't get hit with the chair because he had them Spider-Man reflexes.
And I would have had them shits too, man.
No, you wouldn't.
I would have.
No, you wouldn't.
I would have been like... What I'm saying is that I love push for discipline. And I think discipline is in rare form these days. I think rarely do people today have discipline because they can go on social media and be like, I hate this motherfucker because he said he, and she, like, it's just, and it's more like, hey, this world is changing. Let's be patient. Let's understand everybody while we try to, normalize what you think is correct, but by understanding that other people may not understand that language, You ever heard the joke about racist grandmas? No? Well, like, people that grew up in the 50s, 40s, I'm not saying, oh, that's perfectly fine because they were younger in that day and age, right? But it's very much true. You know what I mean? That people grew up in these generations of terribleism, you know? And I know that sounds more like, oh, tolerate racism. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying more like, let's be more understanding of people that grew up in a generation of terribleness, you know? People who witness segregation and racism hand to hand, or like committed it and are trying to fix the error of their ways. All right, I'm gonna get a little preachy because I know I'm sounding pretty like, what did Frankie just say? Michael Vick is a quarterback for the Eagles, right?
Okay.
He went to jail because he was fighting dogs.
Fighting dogs?
Yeah, you ever heard about that?
No.
Okay, so bear with me, crowd, because I know you're like, yo, Frankie's a piece of shit, you know? And I heard this very good quote. I'm not trying to say forgive people who are older in the generation because they say these things, and just because they're older, they're allowed to say these things. No. What is jail in America most known for today? They're known for not rehabilitating prisoners, right? You know what they're known for? Not rehabilitating them and teaching them the only way how to get back into jail. And that's the biggest flaw in the U.S. prison system today. That when people go to jail in America, all they learn is how to get back into jail. We don't teach them how to get better in society. We don't teach them this or that. And people are false in prison all the time, you know? Rikers Island today in New York City, you'll be if you were selling an ounce of weed before it was legalized, you know, illegally, you'd be put in the same room as somebody who stabbed somebody.
Yeah.
That's bullshit, right? Michael Vick was sent to prison for fighting dogs. He served his time and he got out of jail. But he's still looked at as a criminal and a terrible person. May he be a terrible person? Yeah. But what is prison supposed to be? You serve your time for the crime you committed, and then after that, you're released to society because you served enough time that justice has said that's the most amount of time you serve for the crime you committed, right?
Uh-huh.
And he's still being looked at as a vicious animal, which he, you know, rightfully can be looked at as yes or no, you know? But often we see prisoners who get released from jail and we want them to be hired into jobs, don't we? We want them to have regular lives, don't we? But a lot of jobs prohibit former prisoners from being hired. Why?
Because they were former prisoners.
But that's not how prison is supposed to work, right? You get what I'm trying to say?
No, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So we're supposed to rehabilitate people in society to make them into normalize them into normal society, quote unquote, you know? And that's what I mean. It's just hard to say what I'm trying to say because it sounds terrible, right? But if you see some motherfucker being terrible, you know, your answer shouldn't be like, condemn them to hell forever and never allow them to society again, you know, for saying the things they did or doing the things they did. But if they need to serve a life in prison, they will. But if they committed a crime that could be redemption, like in Daredevil, like, you know, like for real, in Daredevil, there's a scene where there's a former mobster who the Punisher wants to kill and Daredevil wants to save, you know? I didn't realize what they were trying to do in that scene. But I figured what Daredevil wanted to save him is, for one, so he could be redeemed and face his time in jail. But I didn't realize that after the Punisher killed him, that if the Daredevil had brought him to justice, he could have brought down a bunch of other criminals with him, preventing a whole bunch of other crime. But the Punisher caved into anger and killed them altogether, hence forwarding more crime in the future because of his death. So who was wrong?
It's definitely a tricky question.
Yeah, man. So again, like, I know people hearing this conversation are like, this motherfucker's crazy. But I'm really on the side of things where it's just complicated. It's a touchy episode. Sorry. I mean, I know you're going into reviews. I'm so sorry. I got into a whole different tangent.
We got into a whole B-hole right there.
A whole B+ hole. Jesus Christ. Goddamn, bro.
I don't even know how we got into that B-hole. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
You know how? Anyway, next review, please.
I got you at the next review. It's by Wayato. They say, this is definitely my fucking tempo. Holy shit. 5 stars.
At my tempo. Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8. Stop. Oh man.
That whole scene when he's trying to figure out between the 3 drummers which one of them is gonna get the role.
Oh, it was crazy.
Such an intense scene,
bro. He had all 3 drummers practice the same thing over and over and over again for hours, and then after the hours of them trying, when they finally got it, when Andrew finally got it, he invited the rest of the orchestra to be like, all right,
he's like, all right, now let's start.
Oh my god, at like 2 a.m. or some shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. You got more reviews for me?
I do. I got a more serious review for you. It's a longer one.
Okay.
It's by Silent Dawn.
Silent Dawn.
They say
DAWN or DON?
DAWN.
Nice, because Dawn would be like, hey man. I don't know what the fucking impression I was trying to make right there.
So bear with me, it's a bit of a longer one.
I got you, bro.
But this guy says, not my tempo. A rapid, unforgettable, and absolutely stupefying work of romanticism, invigoration, and exquisite character development.
Jeez.
Whiplash is a prodigious study of the quest of greatness, anchored by 2 marvelous and dueling performances by Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. The film starts by taking your breath away, holding it just out of arm's reach until the credits roll. The piercing flow of the editing, the knockout quality of the dialogue, the tinged and textural flavor of the cinematography, the fucking direction. God damn, this was good. I really can't overpraise Whiplash enough. It's triumphant of vitalization both visually and dynamically. He goes on.
Oh, shit.
Let's start with Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, both of which gave some of the best performances of 2014.
Oh, yeah.
I've been a champion to Teller for a while now, and I'm happy to see he's grown in even more regards to his acting. He unleashes here, bringing both physicality and likability that is essential to connecting with the story as a whole. J.K. Simmons, however, is on some different plane of existence or something, because his work is some of the best I've seen, period. The rage, the fascinating quirks, the endless depths and angles that Fletcher showcases is just remarkable. And here I thought he was mean to Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. If Peter Parker was in the film, he'd probably die from crying too hard. There's something about simple stories that connect in regards to character and theme rather than twisty plot that works so much better because of it's executed well. The tapestry of Whiplash is very simple, but that's what gives the film its striking character development and its frenetic energy. Damon Chazelle's story is given room to breathe, flow, and evolve without feeling cheaped or tacked on. The feeling you get when everything in a film is going exactly how you want it to is something really special, and that's how I felt about Whiplash. However, the simple story would be nothing without Damon Chazelle's direction. It is quite simply bewildering in every possible way. It's got this trance-like quality to it where you're just forced to pay attention and feel the film. I know that may sound silly, but with every single aspect working so fucking well, you're just kind of required to scoot a little back further in your theater seat as the images and sounds are so vibrant and alive. The way the camera moves, the way it follows characters, and the way close-ups are used all culminate in a work that already feels timeless. Sharon Meyer's cinematography is wonderful, highlighting flashes of colors and making a musical stage come alive in both its hypnotic qualities and fascinating intimidation. The lights, the darkened faces in the audience. I felt like I was there with Andrew, and Meyer's work really exemplifies that. Colors such as yellow and brown play a significant role, strikingly pushing the audience deeper into the story by providing a spellbinding look to the material. Tom Cross's Oscar-nominated editing is potent and fast beyond words. The cuts are plentiful, but always in time with the credible musical score by Justin Hurwitz. It adds to a visual sense of music, always flowing with the drumming or the many moments of studio band nirvana. The cinematic quality that results from all these elements is so good. I was basically thinking the whole time, this is why I love movies. An immaculate amalgamation of flawless technical flourishes, faultless performances, and a story that is as emotional resonant as it is gleefully deranged and seductive. Whiplash casts a spell on me that is yet to wear off, and I'm happy for that. Whiplash, I think I love you.
Wow. Chill Shakespeare reviews. that was very beautifully written, and as in my notes right here, I when I finished the movie, which I will talk about the review right now, but I wrote the best thing about the movie is the lighting and of course the sound.
Nice.
And without the lighting of that film, Amazon does this great thing when you watch it. It says, "Do you want to watch it?" And the filmmaker's intentions of lighting. I was like, okay.
The fuck?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
bro. I was like, what the fuck? I guess I also got the 4K Ultra version of it, which is like $4, so a pretty good price.
Okay.
And then before you start it says, "Do you want to watch this movie in the original intention of the filmmaker's, point of view?" And it said, and what's it called? Parentheses. It was like, it may be a little darker than you want. I was like, yeah, hell yeah. But I really thought that there's a certain moment when the Clarence Tetcher, right?
Terrence Fletcher.
Alcohol. When he raises his hand to start the composition, his hand is glowing with light. And it's like, kind of the hand of God saying, you don't play until I say, and you don't stop until I do, which is kind of like life,
Yeah.
And I mean, well said. What was his name again? The reviewer?
That reviewer was Silent Dawn, and they gave the movie 5 stars.
Killed that shit. I couldn't have said it better myself. We might as well have him on the podcast. Or
The last review I got for you.
Get me, bro.
Get ready for this one.
But much. Gonna be silly.
Kanye.
I'm gonna watch this motherfucker's documentary series tonight.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought this was so funny.
My belly.
By Kanye. And they say Devil Wears Prada for boys.
Nice.
4 stars. And that's it.
Shout out to Kanye West. Well, let me just say this, man. What the fuck kind of episode was this, bro? We just might end up on that little controversial list with Joe Rogan.
We'll see.
I don't give a fuck. But honestly speaking, man, this was a very, very interesting episode. And when I sober up and listen to it, I'll still be proud I said what I said. And I'm still proud of what you said. And I'm glad you read your shit. And I think you brought up an amazing film to talk about today. An amazing everything to talk about today. And shout out to Wooster St and all that stuff, man. And what a fucking episode.
What an episode.
Holy
what
shit.
A wacky episode.
Jesus Christ.
I keep saying it, but goddamn.
Nah, man, it's fucking wacky. Wacky with 3 C's, 1 K, 2 Y's, and no
3
W's.
Ks.
3 K? Chill! Chill! Whoa!
We are racist.
I'm gonna sound cut that shit out. That's all hobby, man. Now we in this together, bro. Fuck it. Jesus Christ. JK.
With 3 Ks.
3 Ks. Jesus Christ. For the coolest kids on the club. Anyway. Goddamn. KS and KY. So what was this, Javi? What did we do today, man? What did we do on February 10th, 2022?
We talked about what's going on in the earth.
In our minds.
And this is why it mattered.
This is Earth, Mind, and Matter.
I hope you guys enjoyed the show.
Welcome to our brains.
Welcome to our brains. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to rate the podcast.
Please do. If you stuck around this long.
Share it to your friends.
Give it to your grandma.
Give it to your grandma, your grandpa.
Your ex.
Put them on the episodes.
Facts.
They'll probably just leave it playing and that's all we need.
Facts, man. And DM us your thoughts. We love to hear what you have to say after this episode.
Yeah. And again, we'll have all the supplementary stuff for this episode when it's up.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys get home safe. Yeah. Stay safe. Love y'all.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. My tip for the world: don't take shit too serious. Good night. Good morning.
Good night.